Okay, good evening, everybody. Let's go ahead. It's 5 o'clock. So everybody go ahead and quiet down. Let's get started. I'd like to welcome everybody to the February 5th, 2024 City Council work session. Please turn off any electronic devices if you do not mind. Got a pretty lengthy agenda tonight, so moving on into the agenda, item A is Link Transit Development Plan, Facility Study, and Link Transit updates. So at this time, we'll recognize our Transit Manager, John Endo.
Yes. Good evening, Council and Mayor. John Ando, Link Transit Manager. I'm here with Mary Kay from Kimley Horn. Today we're going to give you an update on where we are with the Link Transit 5-year Transit Development Plan and Transit Facility Study. After she concludes her presentation, I'll give you a brief update on the status of Link Transit services. Okay.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having me, Council Members, Mayor. I'm going to go through our initial process and give a little overview of the transit study. As John mentioned, my name is Mary Kay Barukian. I'm a transit planner with Kimley Horn, and I've been working with John, Mike, and Nolan on developing some existing condition reports. So we're going to go through the background of the project, kind of go through the goals, the overarching objectives of the plan, community outreach and existing conditions documentation and analysis that's been completed to date, and then some initial next steps that we've identified. So just to give you some background, we've engaged with the City of Burlington and Link Transit to do kind of a joint transit development plan, looking at the system, route efficiencies, operations, things like that, while also looking into location and siting of facilities. So that includes the operations and maintenance facility, where the buses are staged, maintained, where they live, and then the transfer hub downtown. So just looking at, are these the best locations for these facilities? Is there another way to locate them that would optimize efficiency of the system? So just an overview, high-level overview of the plan. Right now, we're looking at baseline conditions, looking at just the operating environment, who's riding the bus, who could be riding the bus, where are the optimal locations to be serving, and are those locations being served with the current route? So just identifying any of those needs and gaps that exist within the current network. With that information, including stakeholder and outreach results, we'll develop some initial alternatives and then evaluate those with staff and stakeholders. And then that will lead to the 5-year financial implementation plan. We are looking at a cost-neutral plan. So we will, of course, identify any high priority improvements, but we're looking at making kind of moving the shelves around, moving the deck chairs around within the current budget and financial constraints. So in tandem with that, we're going to be looking at facilities. So looking at the state of the current facilities, what activities are happening there. Is this sufficient? If we're looking for a new site, should it be larger? Should it have different access points? Things like that. So right now, we've just started, as of today, validating those space needs. So we'll be working with the transit planning staff, operations and maintenance staff to understand what kind of equipment is being stored on site, what kind of activities, number of bathrooms, parking spaces, those kinds of things. That will help us understand how big of a site we need to have, and then we'll do a GIS site search. So once we have the baseline, how big does the site need to be, we'll also be working on some search criteria, access to major roads, how long of a drive to downtown does this need to be, things like that, operational impacts to the system based on a potential relocation. Then we'll identify the sites. It's always very surprising how many sites are within our initial search, so we'll try to narrow that down to a manageable pool. We have pulled in a commercial realty firm that once this site is down to a manageable don't have because we're not in the city of Burlington. And then once we have that narrowed down to a couple preferred sites, we can work on an implementation plan once we've had coordination with those key stakeholders like yourselves and community, those in the community with vested interest in this siting. So we're still kind of in the early stages, looking at the actual system, evaluating the efficiency and performance of the current routes. So with our data collection and documentation, we'll be able to identify some goals, objectives as we come up with some route alternatives, system improvements. We'll identify a service plan that is constrained financially. We're also looking at a marketing plan. So how are we talking about the system? Do people know about the routes? Are we doing a good job about getting the word out about service availability, where the major service points are? So we did an initial community touch point. We engaged with major employers within the area, the general public, transit riders, to kind of understand how folks are using the system today, how they would like to be able to use it, but maybe they can't now. And then once we come up with some alternatives based on our existing conditions and what we heard from stakeholders and the general public, we'll formulate some alternatives and then bring those back to the public to understand, did we hear it right? Did we get this right? Make some more tweaks, and then bring that final plan back to the public. Because when transit does receive FTA dollars, we'll have to do a required Title VI equity analysis, just to ensure that any route changes we're making don't put a disproportionate burden on low-income or racial and ethnic minority groups. And then once we have that final plan, we've checked all those federally required boxes, we'll bring that final plan to the council for adoption. And then, of course, there are a lot of checkpoints in the middle there. So phase one of community engagement, which we just wrapped up, really we just wanted folks to know that we're doing this. We want folks to understand that there's a process. We'd love for them to participate and also hear their thoughts on how the system operates today and what improvements could be made that the public really thinks are important that could make the system better and more usable for them, increasing access and mobility. Phase two, we're going to confirm what we heard and also present some of the findings from the existing conditions analysis about how the service operates, maybe some needs and gaps that we identified based on their previous feedback, and also just looking at the system, travel flow analysis, the performance of the current routes, and then present the recommendations, the draft recommendations that we've developed. So we will have strategic engagement at this point. The general public probably doesn't really care about operations and maintenance facility placement. We do want them to know that we are looking into this as it does affect the operations maintenance of the operations of the current system. But we're being more strategic with the involvement of stakeholders at that point. So engaging with the council, key community stakeholders, and staff who really have a vested interest in the placement of this facility and cost-sharing opportunities, things like that. So when we engage with the public initially, I know that this 100+ participants, when looking at the total ridership of the system, that's actually a pretty good response rate. We reached out to some major employers, some partner municipalities that Link Transit currently serves or touches their communities. We also looked at Alamance County, or engaged with Alamance County Community College, organizations like that. But we had a pretty good response, in person and virtual together, and had a couple virtual focus group meetings. We also talked with operators that drive these routes today. They're on the front lines, they're hearing from the passengers every day, good, bad, everything in between, so we want to hear from them. Operationally, are there any routes that maybe the turns are a little tight, or you're hearing that passengers really need the stop to be over here, or this location to be served that currently isn't? So most folks that answered the survey do ride Link Transit, but there was a pretty good mix of those that currently do ride and those that don't. And the folks that said that yes, they do ride it, they are transit dependent. This is a lifeline service for them. They use the system every day. Key survey results, folks, and just to clarify that these are perceived priorities of the passengers riding, so to them these are the most important improvements. These haven't been validated with data analysis at this stage, what we're looking at now. But just looking at what would cause you to use the service or just use it more frequently. And this is not surprising. Folks want more service, They want it later, they want it earlier, they want it more frequently. And shelters. Everybody wants shelters and a place to sit at the stop. Not surprising there at all. What would improve the experience at the transfer hub specifically? This was just a way for us to understand how folks are using the transfer hub now. Are they spending a lot of time there? With an hour headway, if you get there, you might have a little bit longer wait. Would a shelter make things, a natural structure make things more comfortable? Bathrooms, things like that. But folks said that benches, shelters, cell phone charging stations, vending machines, those kinds of things, very common improvements would make things more pleasant at the wait. This information is what we'll take into when we're looking at amenities that we potentially want to include at a new transfer hub. This will help us understand what kind of space allocations we need to make on the platform itself and how big the transfer station will need to be and essentially how big the facility will need to be. So survey demographics, most folks did live within Burlington, and most folks did make over $45,000 a year. We chose that because it was the median income of the area. Most folks were self-indicated that they were Black or African American, and we didn't get a huge response from the Hispanic and Latino community, but we do have some ways to amend our strategy in the next round, which is also why we do report these demographics. We want to make sure that we're engaging with the key demographics that use the system, rely on the system, so we can kind of adjust our strategy moving forward. Most folks that use the system say that they do so because they do not have access to a vehicle currently. So again, this is a lifeline service. Folks really rely on this service to meet their daily employment, school, and essential service needs. So just to give you a broad overview of the existing service, for those of you not familiar, I'm sure a lot of you are, the fixed routes operate Monday through Friday, 5:30 to 9:30, and then on Saturdays, 9:30 to 6:30. Serves quite a bit of the region: Burlington, Elon, Gibbonsville, Alamance County Community College, and a lot of destinations within that area. Alamance Community College being quite a large destination for folks. It does connect with some regional services, Part Route 4 and the Elon Express, serving a lot of the student population. The purple route is the highest ridership route, but there was a pretty good spread across the system, which is a really good sign, and makes a lot of sense. You guys are serving areas that need to be served, and the key destinations, as you can see, we have a graduated circle map here that shows ridership by stop, and those bigger circles are spread out across the service area quite nicely. So I would say that the coverage of the service is doing a really good job, especially for such a new system. I'll say this is a new system, and you should be really proud of this ridership. So we also looked at just over time how the passenger trips and the revenue hours, operating expenses have increased. Everything was very typical. COVID definitely threw a wrench in things for all agencies. That's a nationwide trend that we're seeing in our industry. But overall, the ridership has consistently increased since the startup of the service. Same with revenue hours, and unfortunately, like everything else, expenses also go up. Labor and the more hours that you run, that does increase. So another way that we assess needs and gaps across the system or across the service network is we look at where the routes currently serve, and then we also look at just typical demographic and socioeconomic indicators that tell us where populations exist within the service area that would traditionally need or be more likely to use transit. So we look at inputs like racial and ethnic minorities, where are folks living more densely. We also look at where there are concentrations of employment centers, and then where those demographic inputs overlap most densely, and where they just exist the most high number. You'll see the darker shading there. So where you see the darker shading, you would hope to see a route hitting that area. And I will say that some of those areas are quite large because we do look at it by census tract, so that is quite a large area. There might not be that need across the whole tract. But there are high transit propensity areas close to downtown, in the cores of Burlington and Graham, along US 70, and then you can see a little bit northwest of Burlington, there's some shading, more dark shading there. And we'd say the system does a really great job of serving those high need areas. except you can see a little bit just to the north of Graham there. There might be a little bit of missed opportunity there, but we're going to be looking at ways to expand coverage there without expanding operational costs too much. So the next steps, looking at the responses that we got from public outreach and the documentation of existing conditions, we're going to develop some recommendations and then coordinate with staff, get those to a good spot within the current budget. We're also going to be working with transit planning staff and the operations staff to determine how big these facilities need to be, what kind of accommodations we need to make for vehicle staging, parking, restroom facilities, customer service desks, those kinds of things. And then we're going to have a list of detailed criteria that will help us refine what we assume to be a quite large pool of initial parcels, just based on initial geographic boundaries, and then parcel size, and then over time we'll just crunch, zoning, those kinds of things. So just a little bit more detail about the facility study. We're going to be looking at, again, an operations and maintenance facility site as well as potential transfer hub. So these are just some examples of what those facilities could look like. I know when you hear operations and maintenance facility, maintenance, operations, you can hear the smells and sounds coming from that, but they can be very attractive buildings that fit really well within the character of a town. The top image there, we're currently working with a transit agency in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, Coast RTA. This is a rendering that we've developed for a transfer hub that's actually going to be co-located with an operations and maintenance facility near their downtown core. So as you can see, they've got a pretty large passenger boarding platform in the middle there, bays on the outside, and then a small building for operator and passenger comfort facilities. Right there, that's the Go Raleigh Operations and Maintenance Facility there. They do have administrative space. You can't really tell that operations and maintenance are going on at that facility, but they are. That's not a rendering, that's a real image of what it looks like today. And then that bottom image is the rendering of the operations and maintenance facility, an initial rendering that we've got going on. So the goals of the facility study, again, we want to make sure that we maintain and optimize service efficiency. So even though it might be more cost effective for the land and the building, putting a facility way far out, that causes the routes to have to drive quite a far away to start service. So we call that deadhead, and that means that those are hours on the road that the bus is spending not in service, not collecting fares. You're still paying the operator, but they're not picking up passengers. So we want to make sure that we're not adding too much time to routes to be able to start their service. So we want to kind of balance those trade-offs of what's a good deal, what can we get, what can we procure easily, but also not adding additional inefficiencies to the routes. We want to increase convenience and maintain that good level of customer service so that folks are still able to access the routes that they need to access, not adding too much time to their trips. And then also look at opportunities for, can we share costs here? Can we do joint development opportunities with other agencies, other sites that maybe there's multiple sites owned by a single landowner, things like that. But also coordinating with other public agencies, that does maximize the opportunity for grant coordination and the development of the site together. So what's involved in this process? Again, we have to establish what's needed for the site. That's the baseline. How big does the site need to be? The site search, and we have to narrow that pool and kind of evaluate them, rank them once we have some established evaluation criteria. And then once we have our preferred alternative, we will do some test fit contests to make sure that everything actually fits within the site, parking, access, the buses can make the turns, all that. So again, we're still in the beginning stages of that, but we're currently developing the service alternatives based on our existing conditions documentation, and we'll be refining those with staff in the coming weeks and months, in addition to beginning our site search. So I'd love to answer any questions that you have about that. I know that was a lot of me talking, so if you have any questions.
A couple of things you showed on there about the sort of the request and the need for shelters, and we get asked that question a lot. John, what is it we have in the works, like 15?
We planned 25, and right now we have about 13 shelters system-wide.
Okay.
So we're continuing to work with engineering to achieve that goal of 25.
And then the other thing, I think it showed that the Hispanic response was like 4%. And I know that population is growing pretty rapidly. What is their makeup of the season? 20%? Pretty close? It's going to be reasonably close. And, you know, even in our Recreation and Parks Master Plan, they talked about that community being largely underserved in a couple of areas. So what are the plans to try to get some more feedback from that group?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're working with Lynette and Millette at the MPO as well. BGMPO is involved. They've suggested some partner agencies that we can work with. Community organizations that already have existing healthy relationships within the community. I would say traditionally planners and city staff are not really effective at kind of cold calling the public as these key demographic groups, so it's really important to identify and partner with those community organizations early. So we're working on identifying more of those. I know John's already working with a local Hispanic publication. We'll reach out to them and see if we can find some more organizations to reach out to early.
Could we leverage the Dream Center for some of that feedback?
That was something that the MPO suggested, that the Dream Center, we don't have a contact for them yet, but if you have any
I've got it.
suggestions, that would be great.
And then the last thing I've got on my list, obviously, Bob and I just went through this with the MPO. There's a transit feasibility study that we just wrapped up with the MPO that's, you know, more regional, obviously. And are there any overlaps or anything we can learn from that that might help us with this, that we treat those as two separate items? I mean, you've got two studies going on. It would be nice if they could sort of communicate a little bit. How do we dovetail that?
Definitely. We're in coordination with the MPO. Lynette and Millette joins all of our project management calls. So because we're in this initial stage of developing these recommendations, we'll make sure to incorporate any recommendations that came out of that draft plan. So we're definitely looking at this as, you know, how can we, you know, get in lockstep with that.
I think that study's in its 30-day comment period now. Is that right? That's what I thought from it.
So the nice thing about that is we're coming after the conclusion of that study,
Yeah.
so we can now digest the information that the MPO's consultant was able to provide in relation to Link and how Link fits in with the regional picture, and we can now incorporate that into a final recommendation for this council to consider in the future.
John, how about the neighboring cities? This process started. We had some. Actually, Gibsonville was the only city that agreed to work with us back in 2014. But now the question is, with Velon, with Graham, obviously Graham is a key in the county site for courts and systems and so forth. With the growth of ACC, main campus, and then with Mebane, with their growth just, 4 or 5 miles to the east. What has been has there been conversations with those entities in terms of what they might want to bring to the table and be part of this?
Yeah, I'll let Mary Kay talk to our first stakeholder. Focus group, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yes. So the short answer, yes. We've engaged with Mebane, Graham, Elon, folks at the county, and we weren't able to get a response from Woodset. But yes, we did hear from all these entities. So very excited about the transit study. Mebane did say there was interest in service. I think everybody seemed really willing and really excited to get any additional service. So we definitely have those municipalities within our kind of study area. So any needs and gaps as far as population density, major employers, or that kind of propensity analysis that I mentioned, that'll definitely be included. And if we see any gaps there, we'll definitely engage them again in that phase 2. We'll strategically pull in those partners to say, hey, we noticed this in your community. Can you talk a little bit more about what's there? Give us some of that local context.
This study can also lead to framework for us to have additional discussions with municipalities that aren't participating, so that they can understand like what their cost sharing would be, and then they can also understand that they truly have a transit demand. now that we would have a documented study to help present to justify that case.
And if we do identify those needs within those communities, like John mentioned, that'll kind of help us understand what kind of service would go there. Is it a fixed route that operates all day, every weekday, or is it, more peak? Or is it a microtransit zone, those kinds of things? And that'll help us understand what that would cost to fuel those, how much can you chip in, what kind of contributions, or what their share would be.
Was any discussion with the major employers in terms of numbers of people, in terms of any of those particular sites, especially some of the satellite sites? Is there any need to even consider that as a service area?
As far as outside of the service area,
Well, let's just say beyond the interstate corridor to the south, that's probably an area of industrial growth.
I would say not specifically, but if you have any employers in mind, we can definitely look into that to see what the operating environment is around there.
The regional transit did take a look at some of the major employers that are operating within the Burlington Graham MPO boundaries. So that's something, and they did offer in that study some suggestions on how transit can better serve some of those major studies. So as part of this transit development study, we could look at some of those recommendations to see how that fits into Link. One thing that we also want to be mindful too is how big is Link going to be? With that regional study being prepared, for instance, you have a rural operator, and then you have the urbanized boundaries, which Link primarily services. So this study will help lay the framework for, is Link that urban operator providing that localized service within the urban boundaries, for instance? And then how do the other players play into feeding some of those other destinations that are, for lack of a better word, beyond Link's abilities or Link's service area?
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
I have one quick presentation.
Okay. All good.
To summarize where we are with Link Transit. So, as Mary Kate mentioned, our passenger trips have grown to 164,787 in 2024, 92% increase since 2016. And you heard our most popular routes based on ridership is our purple, red, orange, blue, and then green. We did implement fares on December 18 of 2023. There's been no significant issues from the fare collection process. To the right is the current fare structure that's in place. We have multiple ways that people can pay their fare, whether it's on the bus, or they could download the Token Transit app and pay via the app, or they could download the Transit app and the Move It app, which are trip planning apps, where they can plan their trip on how to use Link, and then also pay their fares to use the service. So Mebane has reached out to us in relation to wanting to expand Link Transit to their jurisdiction. Their interest particularly is to connect our residents to services that are in Burlington, as well as to Alamance Community College. They've completed a comprehensive transportation plan, and as part of that comprehensive transportation plan, takes into consideration a circulator route, which Orange County is proposing to operate on their behalf, and then a connector route from Mebane to the Burlington area. As part of this, they are looking to request funding, which we will start a pilot program starting July 1 of 24. And as part of that, we would extend the orange route to the Mebane Park and Ride lot, which is near Tanger Outlets and Cone Health. And then we would provide the associated Aerotrans, which is a 3/4 mile radius around that route. So that's that tannish bubble that surrounds the orange route. The extension will be fully funded by Mebane. It will reduce Burlington's contribution to the orange route by $15,000 because of the sole reason that we are we're readjusting the cost allocation because we're extending existing hours. Right now the bus sits at Alamance Community College and in downtown Burlington. So that time that the bus is just sitting, waiting to go back the other direction, we're going to use that to extend it to Mebane. And we envision coming back before council for consideration of an intergovernmental agreement sometime in spring, which will be similar to the intergovernmental agreements we have in place with Gibsonville and Elon. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions about Link.
So the reinstating the failures has just been pretty seamless?
Seamless, no problems whatsoever.
Good. That's good. Questions on this? You sure?
Yeah, well, a lot of questions, but not in this forum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would encourage everybody to go to the NPO site and look at the study that has a public comment period out there. It would be good to kind of brush up on that and get familiar with it. So, and I've got some information on it if anybody needs any. And I know Bob probably has it too. So, it's just a transit feasibility study. I think it was Nelson Nygaard, is that who did their study? Is that right?
Correct.
So, it was a pretty robust conversation that we'll be developing over time, but doesn't really have any immediate impact.
John, let me ask you, with the county facilities, a large majority of them like to be in Graham or in East Burlington. As we operate now, our system, if someone wants to get on the bus system here downtown, they can get to the courthouse, can they not?
Yes, they can.
There's two drop-offs in Graham, or two stops?
2 stops on one east, one west.
One east and one west. Okay. But besides that.
Right in front of the courthouse.
Right. But besides that, Graham has shown no interest in extending the system to their, really in the residential areas, has it?
Not at the present time, but as we understand from the stakeholder meetings, it seems like they've had some changes in their council, and their management has expressed some interest in wanting to learn the results of this study to determine the potential for additional transit in their service, in their jurisdiction. And that'll allow us, they want to explore, similar to what Elon and Nevin has done, in cost allocating service that would make sense for their community and how we would integrate with Link. So we'll have more conversations with them in the phase 2 of the study to understand how true that interest is.
Just appears to be a number of people in some of the residential areas. And I certainly can't persuade us to. We simply need this service.
Agree. Where exactly is the second stop? So it's the courthouse is one stop in Graham.
Both directions. So we have one across the street from the courthouse if you're going to go towards Burlington, and then one in front of the courthouse if you're going towards Alamance Community College.
And
Those are the 2
ACC?
stops.
ACC is in Graham.
Oh, they're in the city limits of Graham?
Yeah.
Okay. Then yes, the ACC. But we get a separate contribution from ACC
Right.
for having the bus go out there.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Our next item B, is Recreation Parks Master Plan Review. At this time, we'll recognize Tony Laws, our Recreation Parks Director. Tony?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, it's a pleasure to be here. Rachel's going to handle the PowerPoint presentation tonight. I just wanted to remind you, we had a presentation from Barry Dunn, James Pickle back in December at your work session, and then we were going to give you time to review the master plan, and this session is for discussion and answering questions and any comments you have about the master plan. Our master plan, just for a little back history right quick, we did a master plan back in the 90s for 15 years. That expired in 2012. We did a 10-year extension on that plan that expired in 2022. And then we started working on this plan in late 2022 into 2023. So this is a 10-year plan. Could be 15, but mainly 10 years. On the first slide, you see that the background information we had on there about the mainly getting the study started, and also I want to point out that we had almost 4,000 citizens take part in this process. A lot of those were in person. Most of them were in person, various meetings throughout the city, not all in the same place. And then we also had a survey online to let people who get their input, interest, and concerns about the plan. So a lot of local input from our citizens. Next slide. The plan identified 5 key strategic areas for us to concentrate on: organizational efficiencies, program and service delivery, expanded facilities, parks and amenities, financial opportunities and accountability, and maintenance operations. You have a handout on this too, so I won't go through these pretty quickly. And then you can have a handout to look at. On the number 1, the key thing in this is marketing. We had a lot of identification from the public that even though we have a pretty expansive website presence and also on social media, that they didn't know a lot about some of our facilities and programs and so forth. So one of the big objectives and goals out of this plan is to have some marketing done. Hopefully a person that on our staff that can concentrate on marketing. And on to the second. Thing was the continued improvement programs and service deliveries. This is mostly internal needs, what we need to do among our staff and organization to help solve some of our issues and promote activities that we have going on. Third objective, improve and expand our facilities. The 2 main features in this are, of course, the Western Recreation Center that we've been talking about for a good long while, still on the radar, still a big need. And also, there was quite a bit of interest in having a skate park. There's not a skate park in Alamance County anywhere, and we have a lot of people that, and believe it or not, it's a lot of kids and a lot of adults that skate. So, and they're using some of our facilities now for skate park. Big place to gather is the old carousel building in the City Park Amusement Park. That makes a good skate area for them, and they're using it but taking care of it. So I've been down there and talking to that group, and they're very conscious of using it in the proper way. So anyway, the skate park is a possible issue that we want to look at in the near future. Number 4, financial opportunities and accountability. And let me say, I don't want you to read into this like we're underfunded. We're not underfunded. You know, hey, everybody can use more money, but you know, we're managing very well with the funds that we have. This just shows out some opportunities to get funding from different areas, sponsorships, grants, and then yes, we do fees and charges, but it's part cost recovery, but it's also very focused on affordability for our citizens, so that we don't price anybody out of using any of our facilities and programs. And then community development block grant funds. We've been fortunate to use some of those, and that's another we want to keep going on. So just other areas to help in paying for recreation and parks. And then the last one was maintenance and our operations there. And I'll say right out first, we're out of space for maintenance. Our 2 biggest maintenance shops are at City Park, one for general maintenance and one for athletic maintenance, and they're completely out of space. Don't have enough area to store their equipment or their materials, and so that's one of the things we're going to work on as far as maintenance goes, so that we can better take care of what we have and also be able to upkeep all our parks and facilities across the city. And the last slide, I want to point out some things that were in the study that we've already made some progress on. All of you know we just put in an inclusive playground, the first one in our system, through the partnership with Kaboom, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and we also got state legislator support. And that's been a real big hit. It's in City Park amusement area. I think most of you have seen it, and it's used every day and a lot being used. So we've got nothing but compliments about that. All of our main rides, the carousel, they are ADA accessible. The 3 kiddie rides are not ADA accessible. There's no way to put a wheelchair on any of those rides. They're too small, but they're for small kids anyway, so most of those kids can be lifted in and put in a car or a boat or a plane by their parents. So, but the one ride that we don't have that's ADA accessible is the train. We can pick somebody up out of a wheelchair and put them on one of the cars, but that's not always the best. And some people that can't sit up without the use of their wheelchair are not able to ride. So we're in the process of, the state has got a new, what's called an accessibility grant program. The first one is just started this year, $12.5 million available for that. So we're applying for a grant to get a car, another car. We got 3 cars, engine in 3 cars. Add another car to the train that will be ADA accessible for a wheelchair. So we hope to get that grant. A third thing to help our less or lower income families. We worked with Elon University public policy class back in the fall, and they helped us develop a scholarship program that we hope to be able to, we don't have a scholarship program current that'll hope to help kids and families that don't have a lot of funds to spend on recreation to help them participate. We have a grant application in for that to get some seed funding to start that scholarship program. One other thing that's new for our program, we are now collecting demographic data, and by that I mean people that attend our events, special events, or sign up for our programs so that we get a better idea of how many people are participating. We've never had for our special events, whether it's the Carousel Festival, the Christmas Parade, any of the events that we do that have a lot of crowd, we've never had a way to really count those people. Now we're using a company that uses cell phone data, nothing personal, just the number of people that actually come to these events. And it's pretty fascinating what we're finding out about that. So, so we're using that. And some other, we have initiated more staff needs with our group, and also we're in the process of upgrading our signage in City Park, since that was one of the issues that we needed a little more wayfinding signage, and thanks to Morgan and her sign plan, we designed. We're making all of our signs consistent so that everybody can recognize them without not having a lot of different type signs. So this plan is for the city, and we want to give you plenty of opportunity to discuss it, ask questions, make comments, and we'll open that up now.
Trey, did I hear you say you had 2 maintenance sites?
2 main maintenance sites. So we have smaller, like the golf course has its own maintenance, and the lake facilities have. But for the park system itself, we have the general maintenance and the athletic maintenance located in City Park, right across from our offices, next to the creek, and pretty fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
For the scholarship opportunities, where will those funds be utilized? Is that for summer camp? Is that for like
Summer camp, youth athletics, after school, yeah, whatever starts out, whatever programs we have for kids register, and for parents that can't afford their child, whether it's to come to a day camp in the summertime or after-school program or play youth sports.
It's gonna be really good. I was on the website today looking for Zoe for summer camp, and I seen that it's like $700 for 8 weeks.
10 weeks.
10 weeks.
Yes, ma'am.
So that'll help a lot of families that may not can afford it.
Well, you did it 3 more weeks, you thought you could.
That's why I'm looking now. See if I can just pay it all at once and get that discount.
Well, there are payment, options.
Well, that's interesting that Eli started with that study, because that's one of the questions I had about the scholarships. How do you get your brain around that? What does that look like? Where are some of the funding opportunities?
Well, Rachel and Bobby and I were involved in that study. We had 4 outstanding students. They were seniors.
Senior public policy,
Yeah.
independent study.
And they really did a really outstanding, worked with a lot of groups of students from Elon. Some of them have been real good, some of them not so good. So this was an outstanding group. So we're glad to get this.
They spent the whole summer like imagining what a scholarship program could look like and how to beta test it, where you would start some seed funding, and there was an opportunity through Eastern Reynolds, no match. So that's still under consideration.
It was definitely helpful, especially with inflation and parents are, struggling. So yeah, the summertime is coming in the kids, and this the regular after school programs. Make sure that children, is attended to, and they have some supervisor, somebody supervising them. So it'll make it easier for families to be able to put their children in those aftercare programs. So I'm excited about that. Thank you.
Child care is very big with us, along with day camps after school and other programs like that.
So the advantage of the after-school program here is that the kids don't have to be transported. They're at the school.
That seems to
Sorry,
work.
I give Mr. Wall credit during his tenure. He helped us with that on a lot. That's a huge advantage, because once these kids have to be transported by bus to another site, I remember that used to create a number of issues.
We have some on-site school facilities that we use, but we also do our own buses, not the school buses. So we have our own buses that go to certain schools that don't have enough kids to have a day after-school site itself. We bring them to that ways. That's a combination of different schools, so we have enough to do one day.
Did you say 10 weeks for $700?
$700. That's good.
That's great.
10 weeks, the summer months.
Yeah, ours is a little more expensive than that.
Tony, a couple of questions just on the study itself. I've read through it pretty well, and I went back and read through the 2012 and 2022, just sort of looked at it. A couple of observations. One of the questions I had, just a fundamental question. On page 8 of the study, they forecasted that our population would get to 60,082 by 2027. Well, on the state's website right now, they have us at 60,349 as of today. So, I know it's not going to be that big of a difference, but based on trends, and certainly us being the fastest growing in the triad, I would think that's going to be a pretty big number in the next 4 or 5 years.
I'm not exactly sure what they based, whether it was the census or how they based their
It was probably census data that was not completed at the time.
yeah, and so, I would think that we may grow a little faster than what they anticipated.
And then if you looked at the study from 2012 to 2022, a couple of things stood out. There were a lot of budgetary estimates in the old study that really showed this is kind of what you can expect to spend for this or that. And it did a pretty nice recap of what had been done since 1994 up to 2012. So this is kind of void of any financial snapshot.
And I'm not, maybe Rachel will look. We also have Lisa Wolf here, who formerly worked with our department, and now she's a planner. I guess that's your title with Barry Dennett now, Lisa?
Senior consultant.
Senior consultant. But I'm not, you might be able to, financial projections, certainly are up in the air with the economy the way it is, inflation and so forth. So I'm not sure if that has played in on making any financial recommendations. Lisa, you add anything to that?
So Mayor, I'm not positive when the contract, I was just kind of in the background on this plan. But when we're doing the master plan at this level, it's all comprehensive. It's not really focusing in on specifics as far as funding, short-term, mid-term, long-term, right? As you saw that in the recommendations. Now, you get to the instance of wanting to build a rec center in the western part of the city, then you're going to do a feasibility study, right? Which we did that back in, what, 2017.
Yeah.
So we had some good estimates on that. So I think it just depends on to what level you want it to go with the overall plan.
Size of the center.
So,
We can get you some hard figures on square footage, costs for, I mean, as other folks can too, I'm sure.
well, I mean, it's a good sort of 30,000 foot view, but maybe it poses a lot more questions when you start digging into it a little bit. Like how do you implement something that you really don't even know where to start? It's not priorities. So are we going to, like if you take our existing parks that need maybe the recommendations that there's some maintenance needs, maybe some landscaping needs, is it up to us to prioritize those? Because there's just no.
I think it's really up to us to, their recommendations are, on paper, but I think it's up to us to decide how we want to proceed with using this plan, whether there's some things short-term that we can do or some things down the road. And certainly financial considerations like that Western Recreation Center, that's a pretty big investment, so that'll have to be considered by the council and how they want to fund it. So, it's any plan I think that you get done gives you the options, but you have to work it out in your own way to how it's going to be done. Or the Western Recreation Center was in our previous plans, but we weren't able to.
It was the number one item in the previous plan. I went back to look at it.
That's correct. Yeah.
And it really hasn't changed a whole lot.
No, it hasn't.
I think it refers in this plan, it talks about the Western Rec Center 17 times. So it pops up in multiple places.
And if I could add to that, Jim, there's two cities that's smaller than us in the state. Rocky Mount. Rocky Mount's one. And Kernersville's finishing a rec center now. That facility there is already booked 2 years ahead of time on weekends for events.
For what?
For events, whether it's basketball, volleyball, or whatever. This is a whole different world of youth sports out there. Now, the Kernersville facility is a nice facility. Believe me,
But they have swim,
it doesn't have to swim. But they're already looking at adding 3 more gyms because of the demand that they see now as you get in this national market of this traveling sports. And the traveling sports isn't for everybody. Believe me. You do it, it's a real burden, but it's a financial investment on the parent side for sure. But whether that trend will continue or not, but I just, last week at a conference, and I spoke with Jim Mann from Kernersville, and there's numbers of national organizations that they've got involved with now to attract these particular functions are substantial. The question to be, though, is that you can sell that to the public if you want to, and I think you should to some degree. But then in the same sense, you've got to have some opportunities for your local people on some weekend activities too, so it's got to be a balance there. At least I don't think it would be fair since they're paying for this thing or you pay for it. So these larger recreation centers is the end thing, I'm telling you there. It's.
And Harry, you mentioned Rocky Mount. Rocky Mount's got a sports facility that they contract with sports facilities company that we're using to help
operate it.
Yeah, to manage that facility for them. That is pretty popular. So Sports Facilities is the company we're using to give us a pro forma on the pickleball complex to see how we can market that. So I don't, youth sports travel especially is expensive. It's not anything cheap about that. And you have to pay to play on the teams and pay the expense for that, plus going on the road, spending the night at the hotel, eating meals out, all the travel. So it's not for everybody, but I keep up with a lot of trends across the country and youth sports especially, and other sports that, and let me say, first and foremost, I'm proud of the fact that in Burlington, we built our recreation and park facilities for our local citizens first. We've managed to use those as a secondary purpose to bring people into town that helps the economy. The economic impact is substantial, but these facilities were built for our citizens to use and enjoy here at home, and then we use them as a secondary purpose to get people to come into town when they're not normally used by the local people to help on the economic benefit and pay back a little bit on the investment the city taxpayers made. So, but I don't see anything that's going to interrupt that trend. The pandemic certainly was a different experience for us, but everything I see, everything's bounced back after the pandemic. So there's a lot going on everywhere. You can look all over the country, and they're building these facilities right and left.
Well, the awareness gaps were there's three things financially I kind of took from this. One is maintenance being a big deal. Tony's right, I think our revenues per capita was $35, but our expenses was about $187. So, there's a subsidy of about $151 per capita. But obviously on the maintenance side, it was pretty apparent that we could be spending more money, more strategically. And then marketing, nearly 45% were not aware of facilities or programs. Correct. So that game's changed. The marketing game has changed entirely. And, that was a huge void that was pretty interesting to read through it. And then personnel, we're talking about doing all these things and elevating, and I think it's apparent that we need to at a lot of levels. You've got three pretty good focus areas right there. You've got to have more people to manage programs. If that's what indeed you're going to do, you've got to have more maintenance. If you've got to have top-notch facilities, and then we're going to have market budget that is robust.
Well, actually, we were investing probably more now than where we used to have marketing.
I was the first employee.
That's how it started years ago. We were one of the first ones to take part in that. Well, somewhere along the line, the marketing kind of got put by the wayside. But the reality of it is, if you ask a young parent or any citizen about, and especially now with the local newspaper.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
The parents, thank goodness the school system used to allow us to put things through the school system to get to the kids. But the parents don't know that a lot of this stuff. Right. They just don't. There's got to be a plan put forth if you're going to invest this kind of money to at least let the citizens know what the opportunities are. If you're not, you don't need to build these facilities.
That's correct.
And if I could say as well, we just passed the occupancy tax as well, and 60% of it, am I right, 60 or 80? 60% of that has to go to marketing, and it really is put heads in beds, but it is overall part of the strategy as well that it will benefit the local marketing as well, whatever we do outside. So we do have opportunities that we're going to be looking at in next year's budget.
I totally agree. On Saturday, I was at the Y for my daughter's game, and I overheard a mother with her two sons. They recently moved here, I think, a year ago. And she was telling the lady downstairs, the Y employee, I can't believe you don't have any recreation facilities. So I was kind of listening, and I was waiting to see if the staff member was going to tell her that we do have recreation centers here in Burlington. And when she never mentioned it, I had to tell her about the Burlington Recreation Department, and we do have facilities, the Baker Center, the Fairchild Center, where they can actually go and play ball here in Burlington. So I think you're right, to your point.
You got to get people.
They've been here a year and they don't know, they think the why is all that we have.
And the parents are the ones who's busy as already as with young children. There's got to be a way of getting stuff out. I mean, we want it used to be from the schedule and refrigerator to and everything's online, and there's brochures we're doing every quarter, was it not? Sent out. We did TV commercials, radio commercials, and it pays off.
But Craig, I think that's going to be very beneficial now that's having those funds, so we're not having to create or try to figure out a way to be able to do the marketing. If we can utilize the funds that we're already bringing in, the money is there. So I think that's going to be very helpful.
And again, it's supposed to be put heads in beds, but there's a lot of residual that will come from that as well.
I think you can see the TDA budget significantly offset an investment in a marketing plan, professional services, and a position.
Yeah.
I'll certainly be presenting that.
And there was a fair amount of reference throughout a couple of sections of the study that centered around safety in parks. And I think that's another key piece. You have to feel safe if you're going to get out and participate in activities. So, if you loop that into the discussion as well, I mean, it's a lot more than just facilities. There's a lot more to it than that.
We've got a big effort on, we're putting cameras in, as much as we can afford, and as we get fiber optic cable into all our parks, we're putting cameras in to make people feel safer. I know.
And lighting, we need to make sure we've got adequate lighting.
Yes, lighting is part of that too, but used to people, felt a little uncomfortable being observed by a camera, but I think that's what's expected now. Wherever you go these days, you're going to be on camera, and we're trying to get our parks as much as we can so that we can. Unfortunately, we have a big problem with vandalism here. And this destructive vandalism, tearing up bathrooms or other facilities, and we're trying to combat that, plus make people feel safe if they come to a park that they don't have to worry about, something happening to them.
There was one comment in here I think we need to highlight from just a narrative standpoint. I think it was on page 81. It talked about the potential of an indoor sports complex at the Western Electric facility. And that's not in the cards. I think just from a sheer approval standpoint from what we're going to talk about Western Electric in a little bit, but I think there's a lot of Western Electric has been talked about in a lot of studies, and the public hears that and thinks, well, why don't you just make it that? Well, it's not going to be approved for that, without clearing a few more hurdles. But that one does give me a little concern that that's in there.
We brought that up. It's identified in the stakeholder input, so it came from the public as an idea, because I remember us talking with James about it, saying, this is a non-starter.
Probably be good to footnote that one.
Because everyone is sold on that. Like, that is something big that the community, that I hear a lot. Like, that's the number one thing that everybody does agree on is, a sportsplex. Which goes back to Councilman Owens, people do want to be able to travel. I know a lot of people who have children and they're traveling to different places every weekend, and they don't have the option here in Burlington to have some of those games here. So I do understand why they want a sportsplex, but I think making it clear that Western Electric is not going to be that option would be great, and to do it sooner than later.
Well, we can certainly remove that.
That came from the public. That didn't come from us.
It's public generated, but I think we
I
would
get that, but I just don't want to put the
It's
wrong.
One of the trends you might, it's not available to us here locally, but there are a lot of shopping malls, indoor shopping malls that are being converted from retail space to sports space now. Pickleball, basketball, volleyball, indoor sports that they're converting these vacant shopping malls that have gone out of business into repurposed into sports facilities.
Fayetteville, Salisbury, just name it.
Yeah.
Those walking tracks and it's, that's a very valid point.
You know, the other thing I noticed that sort of piqued my curiosity a little bit, on page 81, referenced the need for another, maybe potentially another amphitheater. Expanding the one we had or creating another one. And I had to just reflect on a big event that served dual purpose back in the fall when we had the Lumpsters downtown. Think about how many people that brought to downtown for that event. And we've got that lawn area out there, and all you need is a stage. And
That's what they did.
that's what they did. So I think that event in my mind and the mention of that in this study tells me that we might need to look at that downtown for that area. It would be extremely inexpensive. If we decided to repurpose it down the road, it could be something that could be raised. It's not anything that would be permanent. But think about the number of people that could have events downtown that might be music related like that could just generate.
The impact it could do on business downtown.
Yes.
You've got the
And then
restrooms already in place there now at the transit stop. I mean, there's a lot of things in play that you can
we
make
have a
up.
small amphitheater there, but it's small, but they use
That
the
long
back
area.
because and also we used the stadium for a big concert back in October too, right after the event space was opened over there. So that's another big consideration. The city park stage is, sizable, but it's got a lot of open space around it. But you can get there's so many people around it, and we also have small stages at North Park, which is an open area too that they can gather. But
Downtown would be two purposes.
yeah, certainly that space is available. We'd like to see it used. The fourth Fridays we do out there in the summertime really are popular, and so there's a lot of people that want to come downtown and take part, and a lot of the merchants are taking part in our activities there too.
I mean, there are even references in this thing about the farming market and what the impact that could have under the recreation parks, rural program.
We had a nice farmers market at North Park back before the COVID hit, the pandemic, and we had some partnerships in that with healthy Alamance, help staff it with the coordinator to bring people there. We're trying to revive that. We got a nice shelter that's been built there with a small kitchen that you can use for classes and so forth. So we're trying to revive that and get some more interest in the farmers markets.
So what is the staff request? Just adoption? Is that what we're?
Adoption, acceptance of the plan, or approve
Right.
whatever terminology you want to use.
Right, if there's change, and that was part of the discussion, that if there's changes that need to be made, or, if there's additional focus, we want to make sure is on it, we needed to make sure that was part of the plan moving forward.
Not to try to add on to this, but the very next item needs to be at least mentioned before you adopt this plan, I believe. That's the important step.
Well, that was interesting too, because there was, I know Tony said we had like 4,000 or something respondents, but there was one facilities question. I think it's on page 24. And I showed 221 respondents to that. But it talks about skate parks in there, as well as new parks, South 3540, City Park, West Burlington Rec Center, and the MAC. Sidebar, skate parks, I was talking to the mayor of Ashburn. They built a skate park in Ashburn. I haven't seen it, haven't done anything other than have one conversation. And he said, everybody wants a skate park, they built a skate park, and they used it for a little bit, and then the kids went back downtown. So, I do believe the need, I mean, it's come up quite a bit, I do believe the need, but I think that needs to be carefully thought out. And if there's a spot that they're using now, and I've seen them skate at the Carousel House there, so I've seen them out there.
I think the location is important, if we consider building one, where we build it, and, you know, so that's, and we would, before we'd even attempt that, we would get as much input from our skating community and to see exactly what they're doing.
The Elon is there, and they're trying to create also build a skate park. So that, they have a committee and everything.
Yeah, I've talked to Phyllis Chambers, who's the recreation director in Elon. She just retired at the end of the year, but I talked to Jennifer Companies, she's one of her assistants, and they got a committee that's working on the idea about a skate park in Elon. Nothing's been identified or anything decided. I think they've only had one meeting so far, but they got another meeting coming up pretty soon. I told them to keep me informed about what's going on.
Well, in looking through this plan, referring back to the previous plan, and then knowing what's next on the agenda, I mean, you're going to spend a lot of money. So, you want to move into the next item and then lump them together? Is that what I'm hearing?
I figured there was some synergy in this.
Thank y'all very much.
Tony, one of the questions, what are the benefits of CAPRA certification?
CAPRA is a national program through the National Recreation Park Association. It's optional, it's not anything required. I look at it as, certainly it could bring your department esteem and recognition and everything, but it's not something we'd have to do.
Not for grants or anything, it's not important, or would it be helpful?
None of the grants that I've ever worked on have ever asked me anything about whether your department was certified, but I know it's in the plan, but I think that's pretty much a standard recommendation. You have to spend a lot of time and effort on getting that certification, and then it only lasts for a few years, and then you have to get recertified. So it's sort of like some of the other certificates. We have one with the Senior Center. Cornell Senior Center is a certified senior center, but we have to get it recertified by every 3 to 5 years.
All right, so part 2, a little more discussion on the Mayor Aquatic Center. We've got Fred Patrick, Capital Projects, working on this project with us as well. Just a real quick status update. As you know, the facility was closed as a result of the SBA engineering report about the structural instability. That was on November 30th. And at our last meeting, the City Council meeting on the 16th, Council did approve a budget amendment to allow us to move forward with demolition of the current pool enclosure. That bid went out and was awarded last week to Royal Plum Investments. They'll soon begin work to take down that enclosure. So we're on track, as we discussed it, January 16th, to get that down and prepare to convert the facility temporarily to an outdoor pool. Next, I just wanted to mention the 2021 aquatic facility assessment that Mosley Architects performed on the Maynard Aquatic Center. Two of the big takeaways was a recommendation for some critical short-term needs regarding the pool integrity and the pump room, and then also the recommendation for the enclosure replacement. I'll let Fred give you a little bit more information, but just an overview of those critical needs that you funded in 2022 for the pool and the pump room. Fred, talk a little bit about those.
Yes, so you funded somewhere in the range of $500,000 to really do the
replaster the pool and make it, it had several areas that were showing rust. And we had a contractor come in and replaster the entire pool. It looks really great. Thank you for funding this. And then we went through the pump room and upgraded the existing pump room. So it's in good shape. We've got a new filter replacement, an upgrade. Instead of sand filter, we've got a media filter upgrade. It's got a lot of benefits, and it's more cost effective for the city overall. So we've done some new gutter replacement all the way around. We'll put a new gutter grating on it, and a lot of things to in the short to say. The pool's in really great shape right now. It's just the enclosure is our problem right now. But the pool is and the pump room is in good shape.
So the NOSA study gave us, on the highest level, some parameters for a pool enclosure. They're recommending a one-story permanent building that's insulated and temperature humidity controlled and is made from materials appropriate for the corrosive environment of an indoor pool. So those are sort of our big parameters of what that study is directing us to do. Before we move forward with the staff recommendation, I did think it was worth giving you some baseline of MAC data usage. We've got Sam Crossan, who's the aquatics director here. We've got some specific questions, but keep in mind we were closed for the first quarter to finish those critical needs that Fred just discussed. But Sam had more than 15,000 reservations in the balance in 2023, 2,000 water exercise class participants, over 5,000 lap swim reservations. As we mentioned before, the facility is home to 5 high school swim teams. And since the closure, I think Tony and Sam, and probably some of you, can agree that we've had constant inquiries and advocacy from email, social media, phone calls, personal interactions about folks really wanting us to hear the need for indoor aquatic opportunities. Sam also runs indoor swim lessons and has a year-round recreation swim team, the Burlington Bull Sharks. So that's kind of the current use. Also thought it was important to mention that the Recreation and Parks Commission did discuss this during their January meeting and adopted a statement in favor of demolishing the pool enclosure, which you have voted to do, and to move forward with the design and installation of a permanent facility. So that group is in favor. Yeah. And Recreation Parks Commission member Jennifer Andrews?
Yes.
And also an avid swimmer is here, so if you've got any questions from that perspective, she's here to share those. So at this point, staff feels pretty comfortable making a recommendation to council for consideration that we move forward with designing a permanent pool enclosure so we can continue to provide indoor year-round aquatic activities to the community. Next steps for us would be to go out for a qualifications-based procurement of an architect, and that's going to require us advertising for it, reviewing their submittals, interviewing firms to find the best fit, and then working on contract negotiations with that architect. We would come back to council probably late spring, early summer with a budget amendment and contract request to engage that architect to begin planning for that permanent structure. As we go through the design process, schematic designs would come back for council input before we move forward to bid documents or anything like that. So after we've got an architect under contract, you are probably looking at about a 2-year process for design and construction of that permanent facility. I think that is important to mention at this juncture.
Did you say enclosure?
Enclosure facility.
Is that a change of heart from what we talked about at the very beginning? Or did they?
It's something they had mentioned. I think it was the cost comparison to doing both. I don't think we ever made a decision. They just showed the cost comparison to rebuilding one or to start over.
So think of a, masonry, one-story pool building, including the outdoor. Instead of like a temporary, in the bubble, and then this facility that have, 10, 15-year lifespans, this can do.
City of Marsville just did this in the last 2 years. Same concept. They had a bubble and they had like any good permanent city.
What city was that, Harold?
Marsville.
Morris.
Marsville. Not the one in Charlotte, but the one in Raleigh.
Yeah, bars, M-O-R-I-S, yeah.
We did have a discussion with respect to maybe having aquatics at a western facility as well, an indoor facility. But I think there was a discussion about having 3 pools that we operated. Would we have enough staff to be able to operate 3 pools? So if we had to change, then we would just look at the MAC as your permanent, enclosed pool.
I thought we talked about turning the back into an outdoor facility.
Short term, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So we can get some use out of this summer. Yeah.
Okay.
That will be
Got
the
it.
case for this summer at least, and as you see,
Right.
that construction
Yes, sir.
schedule
That's
probably.
where I was confused.
Yeah.
Sorry,
We're gonna have to, we had to tear it down regardless.
yes.
So we said, all right, go ahead and tear it down so we can get use out of it. And then come back to us with what the proposal is. So, and I've thought about this a lot. I mean, we've got a beautiful facility in Old Park. And a lot of effort went into that. I think it was Senator Gunn helped us get seed money to start that project when we initially did that, and it was just beautiful. And if we did a rec center on the western side of town, there were some discussions about, do we just put a pool in there too? But the one thing that resonates with me over the years is it's been the hardest staffing piece that we do as a city. And it doesn't take long to figure out that maybe we're pretty good at managing 2. I don't know if we can manage 3. I mean, it's just a lot of extra layers there. It's true. And expense and maintenance and whatnot. So,
And one thing Councilwoman Bigelow said when we were talking earlier was location as well.
yeah, and I've heard that. Yeah, people are, everybody's kind of different. Y'all creatures of habit. That's what the pool is. Let's keep it right there. Let's cover it. Going down the road. But the bottom line is, I mean, we talked about this a little bit when we did the MAC study a couple years ago. And I mean, it's going to be millions of dollars. Like, Nolan, 3 million or 2, 3 million? 2, 3 million. I can work that in every meeting.
I was trying to figure out how you were going to do that. Oh, good.
So we get an architect, we design it, and I'm assuming that we get hard costs from that. And that means it's going to be nothing.
It was $5 million to tear it down,
Still
right?
know
Was
that
it
you
$5
want
million
to
to tear it
get
down?
So, 500.
About a half.
Yeah.
Oh, $500,000 to tear
Yes,
it down.
ma'am.
Yeah.
So then maybe the other was to, what's the total cost?
We don't know yet. The 2021 study, which of course rapid inflation, ballpark about 400,000 for design, about 5 million plus for
That's what
construction.
five, okay.
Now, that was the 2021 study, so you're probably looking at
That's what we said.
more like
More
2, 3 million.
factors than all that.
Nine.
Now, is that just for the structure?
Yes, I mean, it would include HVAC, humidity control, all the things I mentioned. So I mean, it's a simple construction project.
Yeah.
The pool is there and in good condition.
If you ever get a chance, come out to the YMCA in Greensboro. Off of Lee Street.
What?
It'd be nice to have to take a little field trip, guys.
That'll be they built you can be a nice, beautiful community center. And they got a wing and a pool in it, and it was structured out. I haven't been in several years. I actually took people met up there several years ago. But it'd be interesting to see how that facility has lasted. But it's it's a nice facility.
And that was my next question. So when the original cover was built, you said it had like a 12-year lifespan was on it for that dome?
It lasted 11 years. It was air inflated cover. It was just like a tarp type cover, and we just blew it up with air, and that lasted about 11 years.
Thank you, sir. So now going forward with spending this new money to rebuild, this is going to be long term. There's no cap on, like it's not expected to go out in
We're considering this
15, 20.
a permanent building.
This would be a permanent structure.
It was a permanent structure, not a, the air inflated bubble was always
Temporary.
temporary and last so many years. You had to take it down and put it up every year, so it was an outdoor pool in the summertime with a cover off of it, but that was a lot of wear and tear on that, and a lot of labor. Some of us that remember having to do that, but and then when that wore out, we got the metal framework and fabric structure that we got now, and that was supposedly the going thing for outdoor for covering swimming pools at the time, but chlorine corrodes everything, even stainless steel, which is what that framework is.
And the inside out.
That's correct, inside out.
So this time, at least we're spending the funds, but the community can expect to have a home for swimming.
One of the options is using wooden rafters and supports, which wood's not affected by the chlorine, so and be a lot nicer looking inside too. So
But we certainly need an architect with the understanding that we're enclosing it with a permanent structure to create an indoor aquatics facility. I think, not speaking for recreation departments in the past, but I think they were trying to provide that convertible, take off the sides in the summer so you could have a hybrid facility, but this would be committing to an indoor aquatics facility.
Well, so the question really would be, you're talking about $400,000 for an architect, give or take? And so that's what the ask is now.
The ask is to allow us to go find that architect with the intent of building that permanent structure. We'll come back after we've negotiated that agreement with the best qualified architect.
So the big question is, are you prepared to spend $6-7 million? Otherwise, don't even move in that direction. And do you want an indoor pool right there? Otherwise, it's a task and not very purposeful. So what's the thoughts on that? I mean, we've all been briefed on this from staff. We've been briefed on in work sessions going back to 21. We knew what we were facing at some point. So, and community feedback, at least community feedback I've got is we want to cover the pool right there.
Well, my response is yes and yes.
Yeah, the advantage of that's in the middle of town. We talk about, I know we've been criticized for mentioning this comment, we talk about, we don't have a recreation center in the western part of town. Well, that's right, we don't. And that's the little need. But the pool's in the middle of town, it's what we call neutral. And it's, it's a, I'm speaking for the Y, but the Y facility is really old. I mean, I think it's the only shot we got really if you want to go into the receiver.
So we've got the MAC issue, we've got this study right here, master plan. We've got some fair amount of things that are still open-ended, right?
Yes, sir.
So from a financial standpoint, if we wanted to move forward with some of the recommendations in this master plan, we adopted, if everybody agrees that we adopted, we need to prioritize and start a plan of action on some of those items.
That's a bond issue too.
That's where I'm going, right there. So I mean, I think staff can do enough penciling to sort of start looking at what that total bond is gonna look like. But I'd like to see us take this recreation and parks study and prioritize some maintenance needs that we have, and certainly some beautification and landscaping of those existing parks.
Yes.
We plan to do that, Mr. Mayor. We already talked about it staff-wise. If this plan is approved or accepted, we'll start working on putting some priorities together and what we actually need out of it, and present it to you at a later date.
But if we could, there's a secondary piece to the Paramount that's come up in discussion. If we can sort of add that into it, and I'd like to see, I think there's enough expertise on what some other municipalities have been on sportsplex or rec centers, that we could start looking at what that dollar amount's going to look like if we want to put it in a bond. If we do, time matters.
It does, and we've talked about before about adding, maybe paving it as well. Is that something we want, or we will look at this separate as a recreation bond?
Well, we did talk about that. That's a good point. We have some paving needs that are pretty significant. We've worked hard to catch up, but we're not getting it. We just, so what's everybody's thoughts? I'd be in favor of that. Yeah.
Can you do that?
And Peggy's not here, and I think there's two separate questions you have to ask on the bond.
Correct.
Yeah.
Do you support a recreation bond at X amount of dollars? Do you support a transportation bond at X amount of dollars?
That'd be separate.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
It could be, if it's passed, it would be total, but yeah, the issuance would be total.
Get the number together.
Is everybody in agreement with that?
We'll try to have a really good outline at our next work session for you.
And all would be the timeline on the bond.
We've had some conversations with Davenport. We've got to get busy.
March, April to
Yeah.
get it on the ballot.
All right.
In 24.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, for November.
I think April was sort of the drop dead.
Yeah.
What year did we do that street bond passed?
He said
2006.
2005, I believe. 2005 or 2006.
Yeah.
When?
That was 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Edgewood.
That's right. Okay.
We're going to do that March.
Okay. And so, moving backwards on the recreation and parks master plan, is everybody in agreement to adopt that plan and have staff start prioritizing some of those items?
Yes.
Okay.
Get on consent tomorrow?
Yep.
Do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep. So item D is emergency management transition. So it looks like there's 3 items that we're requesting consent on. So Rachel, you can take that one?
Yes. Kevin Turner here tonight as well, so if you've got any specific emergency management questions other than the process, he's here to answer those. I don't have a PowerPoint for you, just a few talking points so you understand what we're requesting. Prior to 2020, an emergency management position was housed in the police department. Primarily serving police needs, but also working with the rest of the city. In 2020, and really the height of the pandemic, we found ourselves in urgent need of an emergency manager. Sought those services from either Guilford or Alamance, since Burlington's located in both counties. And Guilford responded with an opportunity for an interlocal agreement, a contract with them to provide emergency management services. Along with that contract was the provision of a dedicated full-time staff person to serve Burlington's emergency management needs. So in 2021, after we finalized that contract with Guilford County, Kevin was hired to serve as Burlington's emergency manager. He works out of the municipal building here every day, reports up to Guilford County, but works for us. We've been really pleased with that relationship and his service. Gilbert County and Kevin have helped really build some capacity in emergency management in the city. He's got an emergency operations plan finalized. He's working on an integrated preparedness plan for the city of Burlington. So as we prepare to co-locate emergency management and 911 functions with Alamance County out on Plantation Drive and Old Country Building, considering the capacity building and that coming co-location, we felt it was prudent to go ahead and move forward with bringing emergency management back in-house and allowing that to be a full-time position as it has once been. We would bring Kevin from Guilford County over to service with the city of Burlington and have him on staff with us. Additionally, for the coming fiscal year, we'll need to work out a contract for web EOC services. But for us to be able to do that, we request that council consider reclassifying the Legacy Police Department EM coordinator position to an emergency management director position that reports to administration, that would report up to me. A budget amendment, moving some funds around from professional services, where we were paying Guilford County for that contract, and bringing it into an operational budget for emergency management going forward. And amending the existing interlocal agreement, which outlines the transition, the fact that we'll keep Kevin, what day he'll stop serving there, when he'll come on board here. This sort of outlines how that will transition, and then that contract will expire at the end of June. So that's what we need to do to make that happen. It's financially pretty much a wash. There's not a great benefit either way, but it
Doesn't do anything. Guilford County's okay.
They're pleased. We've been pleased with their service. We've been in communication with them since the summer about our intention to do that. Basically, they hired too good of an employee. And we figured, you might can elaborate on this, but we have to request resources from Alamance County anyways. That relationship has to be very strong for Kevin to do his job. So it kind of, for lack of a better term, takes out the middleman, and that we'll be working directly with Alamance County when we have resource needs without going to Guilford.
Gotcha.
So just streamlining operations now that we're in a good place to do so. I think it was certainly the right move, and Guilford's provided great service when we were in that crunch during pandemic times, and now we're ready to do it on our own again.
Okay. Everybody good request? Okay. All
We'll
right.
see that on the consent agenda tomorrow. Thank you.
Our next item, item D, is the Paramount Theater and Event Center Director update and report. So we'll have Morgan Lasker, our Community Engagement Director, and Eric Kirchner, the Paramount Theater and Event Center Director.
Good evening. This evening, Eric Kirchner and I come before you to talk a little bit about what's been going on at the Paramount. So Eric was hired in October of '22, and he has hit the ground running, spending a lot of time assessing our Paramount Theater, our staffing, everything as we're preparing for our expansion project and for the construction that's going to happen. So Eric's got about 25 years in arts administration and has been with 7 either arts facilities or arts councils, really throughout the country. So he walked in at the exact right time. I think our project team that's been on the Paramount construction project could speak to him walking into those meetings and immediately sharing very useful information as we're going through the design development phase and finalizing that. So tonight Eric's going to talk a little bit about himself, and then we'd love to receive any questions or thoughts from y'all.
Welcome, Eric.
Well, thank you all. Once again, I'm Eric Kirchner, and my history is what Morgan was saying. This is actually the 3rd theater that I will have renovated and reopened. So this isn't my first rodeo with all of these things. A lot of the terminology that's being used is very familiar to me and so forth. And I've been really grateful to the design staff for being so open to suggestions that I made when I first got here, because I didn't know what I could and couldn't say, and they were really open, asked me for my opinion, and I think actually have made some significant design changes based on those recommendations and observations that I've made. So I look forward to continue to work with the whole staff to be able to bring it to its fruition. One of the things that was really exciting about this position was this project. This is going to be a very unique building. For a downtown like Burlington to have something that is as dynamic as what both the renovated Paramount and the Event Center together are going to be able to accomplish is really something. That's very exciting to look at it from an administrative standpoint, from a programming standpoint, and in one of my observations in just my first couple of months, the Paramount right now is heavily rented. Very, very heavily rented by local community arts groups, which is fantastic. But the audience that comes to their shows does not interact with downtown in the way that I think you all would want and expect. They're coming to be able to see loved ones or relatives or friends or whatever who are a part of a production, and then as soon as the show's over, they're getting in their cars and just going home. They're not interacting with the downtown businesses. And so one of the things that I've been talking to Morgan about, even though it's down the road a little bit, is the idea of doing programming that will actually create a new type of an audience that will come to the Paramount, that will be interested in either pre-show or post-show interaction with downtown, and what that might be, and how we can encourage it through the programming and through the marketing of that programming and so forth. So very, very exciting opportunity. I look forward to going down the road with everybody and making it the best that it can possibly be. And really, I'm very interested in your questions or your expectations that you have for what that facility will be able to do in the future, and I'll try and answer as best I can. Okay.
Well, you nailed it about the interaction with downtown.
Without doubt.
I mean, from the very beginning, it just, I'm not blaming anybody. It just never happened. But there were some businesses that wasn't open actually in the beginning, let's be honest. But, how that's done, that could be accomplished, that everybody wins.
Yeah, no question.
And how does that accomplish? I mean, probably depends on the functions you have in the theater, to some degree.
Yeah, and also, in the long run, also the reputation of the city. Because if you're bringing in a great lecture series, if you're bringing in great artists, that is going to reflect on the branding of the city as well. And so I think there are all kinds of ways that we'll be able to interact in, and all boats will rise, as they say.
Well, I think everybody's always believed that downtown, we can talk about bringing more activity to downtown, but without a catalyst project that gets people interested and involved, it's really just speak. So, we've got some wonderful community theater groups, and my family's been involved in them in the past, but having someone that supports downtown, either pre or post event, is extremely important. I think we've got Downtown Corporation now. I know there's some new board members, and they're pretty dynamic in how they're wanting to think about things. Aaron's working really hard at the sort of the new path that they want to take. So the timing couldn't be better to just get it. I think people are just starting to see something special happen that they can participate in and enjoy downtown.
Yeah, and I would also give a shout out to the special events folks in Parks and Recreation and what they do downtown. And I think that in the past, whether it has been heavily rented or whatever, the Paramount hasn't necessarily been included. And so I've really enjoyed meeting that staff and seeing how they plan events and how good they are at it, And it excites me to want to be a part of what they're doing. And so I would hope that we would, be more a part of some of their really, really big events.
So heavily rented is a unique term because when you think heavily rented, you're thinking you're going to be seeing some show every weekend. But I think and that's maybe the misconception, but there's a lot of practice time that's rehearsal time that is rented the theater. That prohibits another event.
Yeah.
From taking
So
place.
it's a great example of that would be if a community theater group rents it for 21 days, they're only performing 9. So all the other days are about loading in, they're about setting up, they're about rehearsing, and then, and all that stuff. So you're right, it can be a little deceiving that it might look like there's nothing happening at the Paramount, but there's almost something happening every night.
And there was some limited success. We had a gentleman that no longer with us who brought some bands in. And quite honestly, sold the place out every time he did. Absolutely. How can I say this?
We had KC and the Sunshine Band one time.
Yes, we did. The key is to make sure that facility, it's just my opinion, is something that everybody can use, and just not one particular group of individuals. They've got a mindset that it's going to be just this type of services provided in there. And it's got to be kind of diversified, and that's creates a little, make your job a little harder. You might not have quite as much hair in a few years. That's okay.
I'm impressed that you think I have that. But I really think that, once again, the expansion, the event center part of this is going to alter what we're able to do and for the size of the audience. So, the idea of having a festival that actually goes on within that entire complex, where the Paramount is doing something and then you've got 2 other events going on simultaneously and they're all thematically connected, is something that is really dynamic and will pull that audience coming from farther away than they are now, especially if the artists are of a certain quality. And so, but there's a lot of thinking that's going to go into, how we're going to run the facility, and so forth. And so I'm looking forward to working with everybody to try and, bang all that out as we go through. But the expansion and the way that it's going to be done is going to make it really, there isn't anything we aren't going to be able to do. And that's a great credit to the design team and how they were thinking about it and approaching it.
And we wanted Eric to come because we feel like that he had vision. It took a couple of times of advertising to get the right person. But we wanted to make sure that y'all felt comfortable with the vision that he has, because we are fixing to spend a good sum of money on the construction and renovation at Paramount. We wanted you to feel comfortable with what we have planned and the person we have there moving forward.
When does it start, construction?
We're in design right now, so we plan to come back to council mid-April with a schematic design. We're finishing up that phase. And then after that, it's really hardcore design with all the MEPs and all the engineering firms already involved to finish it up. So they would finish design and be ready to bid late summer around August. So that's the schedule that we're on.
And some of that's coordinating with what we're going to have to do with the infrastructure improvements downtown too. Is that not right?
That's right. That's synchronized with Todd's schedule with the streetscape project. And if this ends up being one of the items on the bonds, I kind of touched on that earlier, that kind of time's pretty good for finishing up your time.
Yeah. Well, just think about it. So you're talking about summertime kicking this thing off. There's going to be a lot of infrastructure improvements, streetscapes, things like that. In the blink of an eye, you've reinvented your city. I mean, you don't get that opportunity very often.
This is a generational project, whatever it is.
Yeah, so I heard you say the word dynamic 3 or 4 times, and I feel the same way. I'm glad you put your fingerprints on it, because that outside view coming in was the missing link, I think, for what we were trying to accomplish. So we appreciate that.
What are your thoughts? Like, what are different examples? The band is one. I've heard you mention. What other, like, what else would be happening in the building at the same time? Like, what is your vision for that? I'm a new council member, so I'm kind of aware of the plans and the cost of it, but I'm not aware of anything other than the basics of it being the Paramount. I know that you're going to have a place, a lounge area. I'm excited about that, to be honest. But what other?
Well, just a quick rundown of what the new expansion would be. So on the first floor, you've got a multi-purpose room that could do any number of different things. During a show in the Paramount itself, in the Paramount Theater, it'll serve as an extension of the lobby. And so we'll do concessions and things like that in that area so that there's a better traffic flow. But when there isn't a show that's in the Paramount, it's any number of things, from a visual art exhibit to classes. I really do see the both of the first floor and the second floor multi-purpose rooms being used for a set of classes that are not currently being offered in the area. And then, of course, the top, the open rooftop, is going to be a real draw, just because I think it's going to be so unique, and pre and post show, that's where people are going to want to be. An example of an event that would really go well in this configuration would be a movie festival. So if you had 3 movies showing at the same time, first floor, second floor, and the old Paramount, the original Paramount, that's a pretty dynamic event. And it could be maybe there's a lecture by someone's going on the second floor, while there's a screening on the first floor and a screening in the Paramount, and then it ends, and then everybody shifts and goes to another location. River Run is a very, very successful film festival in Winston-Salem. And so, not trying to reinvent the wheel, if you just reached out to them and said, hey, what do you think about doing an extension of River Run, but doing it here, I think they'd be very interested in that. I think there are lots of different opportunities. And also corporate events, where now, because you have more space, you could actually have 380 people in the Paramount, and then breakout sessions, you'd actually have somewhere for them to go. And so I really think that, when I've been looking at it with the design team, they've been asking me great questions, like, how do you see this room being used? When would it open? When would it close? And so we're working through a lot of that stuff right now, because it's, it would be exciting just to try and do everything, but then the design would become frenetic. So we'll kind of slowly pare it down. But I hope I was able to answer your question about kind of the look of the extended building is very much these multi-purpose rooms, and that is exactly what they're meant to be able to do a lot of different types of things at one time.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, guys. All right. Thank you. Our next item F, is Western Electric website discussion. So, Morgan, you can take the lead on that one?
Yes, sir.
So, earlier, in an earlier council meeting, you guys asked us to put together a website that would help explain really the Western Electric property to our community. I think staff and council alike have been getting questions for a long time about something that is pretty complex to simplify, to say the least. So a staff team and I sat down. We were fortunate enough to be a part of the meeting that was held with the Department of Defense, NCDEQ,
the Army Corps of Engineers a couple weeks ago to do an on-site walkthrough and then sit through some information. So that was really helpful for me to hear all of that in one space and then coordinate even with our staff experts on the project and then think about how do we tell this complex story to a resident. And I don't know that we've simplified it enough still, but we're trying to hit the mark on something that is complex. So this is a draft page that is on our website right now, and so what I'm going to do is just talk through a little bit of the structure of the page, and then we're looking for feedback, and then we'd like to make it live and start to push it out to our community and talk about it. So this webpage consists of a little bit of history about the property, just to kind of orient our resident or patron to the page about kind of what it was and what it's been through. We do highlight here that it did change hands out of the Army and that it's in a private property and that we do not own that. I think that seemed to be one of the major misconceptions that was in our community that, why aren't we doing anything about it? And, there are several reasons for that, and one of the biggest ones is that we don't own the property. So did a little bit of that in an introduction, and then tried to kind of talk about why this is uniquely complicated, because I think that would be the word that I would use. It's uniquely complicated. I think even when we've talked with our folks at the DOD, there's not many communities that are in the same spot. I don't know if there is another one that's maybe in the exact same spot we are with this location from what I could discern. And so again, that private property owner, we highlight that. And then something that has been said out loud a lot, trying to again simplify a complex message, was things above ground, who's responsible for it? The property owner. Things below, that would be the DOD or Army. So just a simple graphic to maybe explain to someone that concept quickly. And so then we go on to talk a little bit about that and touch a little bit on the private property owner and the brownfields, his ineligibility for the brownfields. So we do touch on that a little bit because that changes kind of the marketability of the property. And so then try to come up with kind of a simple graphical way to say who's responsible for what, because I think from a communicator standpoint, obviously I'm not an expert in this project, and if anybody asks questions, Todd is prepared to be that person. But from a communicator's perspective, it was important to try to delineate very clearly who was responsible for what, because there's just so many players involved in the project. So we'll try to do that here with this graphic. And then another fun acronym out of all of this project, because there were many, was the CERCLA process. So, that is the process in which this property is going to have to go through. And so we tried to talk about that a little bit, this 7-step process, and explain kind of where we are in that. And it's not where we're in that, it's where the DOD is in that, right? And so tried to kind of be clear about that and highlight something that is unique in our community, right? This is a uniquely complicated project, but we have this interim remedial action, which I think folks might be able to speak about better than me, but we were lucky to, have the Army agree to that, so that's happening and beginning in February this month of 24. And then we've got a little information about the full CERCLA process, and then you can dive even further if you would like to. And then
some of this came from the Army's. This is their timeline. I think that's important for everybody to know too. That's the Army's timeline for what they proposed.
Absolutely, yeah. They were able to share their PowerPoint slide back with me after that day. We were able to clip this out for the DOD's tentative timeline. So we wanted to make sure our community had some awareness of that. And then we just took a moment to highlight kind of, we've not
nothing. We've been doing, I think, a lot. So we wanted to make sure we were capturing that in this section. And then NCDEQ has a laserfish repository of documents from the 80s, I think. It's one of the older ones that we found, yeah. So if anyone wants to take a deep dive, there's where to do it. And then, again, with all of those community questions and thoughts and concerns, you know, what can the community do? That's a question that I think that y'all probably get a lot, and we do too. So wanted to provide an opportunity for folks to reach out to some of our federal delegates and others that can help spread this story a little bit. So that's kind of how we structured the webpage right now. It was a bit of a puzzle to kind of, you know, where does information fall? I think as we go through this process with the DoD, I think it was we have 3 more meetings with them maybe on site. So as we get more information, our goal would be to continue to share that here. So happy to receive thoughts or feedback, direction.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but we're also going to put what the DoD has invested.
Yes, sir. That is on here.
Okay.
And maybe it needs to be bigger. Yeah, the figure that I got from Mr. Edwards was $3 million to date from 2016.
Is it right there?
And a lot of that will be the remediation they do right now. And that they'll start this month.
You know, if you sort of recap.
It used to have the number 3 in it. Sorry, John's been editing it today.
These links not active?
Not yet.
Not yet, it's flat page. I would say. You know, a year ago, I said, we were discussing this, and I said, well, everybody be comfortable if I took the lead on this, let's just see where we can drive it. And on the 24th of January is my 29th meeting. If I take into consideration meeting with staff, meeting with the property owner, meeting with the broker of the property, meeting with outside counsel, just a number of things that we've had to do to try to keep this thing moving forward, and it is uniquely complicated. That's probably, you could probably headline it and say that, but you know, Peter's involvement before he left us was important. Todd's been right there every step of the way, and just, it was almost like on the 24th when we met, all of a sudden we could just see a little glimmer of hope. That we were fortunate enough to get them to commit to an interim plan, which I think Morgan said it was going to be this month that they get started moving 300 tons of dirt. So with the potential of coming in behind that, moving about 250 tons forward.
For the testing?
No, the cleanup of the hot spots. Yep.
The water and salt.
Yeah. So, but it's a process. I mean, 3 to 5 years. Is that kind of what we taught with you?
Yeah, I think that was their expectation schedule, that they would be working towards not necessarily finished. There would be long-term monitoring.
Correct.
But that would get to where they were not doing any more work and just monitoring to make sure everything they did was functioning right.
So one of the positions that we've sort of tried to get across is that without it being in the Brownsville program or having an end use specified, the cleanup standards would be to industrial use. Is that the right term, Cass? And that's the most basic. That's the most basic cleanup standard that it could be. So we tried to leverage our land use plan, and we said, hey, in our land use plan, this is residential. So even though it's not in a program and it has no specified end use in our land use plan, it is residential. We didn't get a commitment out of that, but we've got them moving in that direction now where they're like, all right, I think what we're learning is they're willing to help us if we can justify the right of way access to ask. And David's worked with our outside counsel, and we had sort of a pre-meeting that was very beneficial, and then we've got a consulting group that I learned more in that meeting probably. What could have happened, what should have happened, that didn't happen was the BRAC process. And they've added about 10 more acronyms to the playbook. But one of the things that you'll see take place pretty quick is us coming up with sort of a community members, maybe a task force. I think they call it a restoration advisory board. Is that what it is?
Yeah, a RAB.
RAB.
The Restoration Advisory Board.
So, to the point that that Morgan put up there with what can the community do, we're going to be looking for some people to serve on this RAB. They're going to reach out. We can sort of steer some folks in their direction to just have some community input along the way. And I think that is something that they plan on doing in the next 90 days.
They said it'd take about 6 months to spin it up, is what they
Okay.
said in their presentation.
Yeah.
Now, Morgan, as we speak now, these buildings are going to be there, right?
Yes. The existing buildings.
60 buildings.
They're not taking any of those down.
I'm sure that was, yeah, they're there then.
Yeah, they're not taking the buildings in.
Okay.
Like Mayor Butler was saying, they're essentially pulling out the hot spot of the groundwater, and then they're gonna put in a barrier that is gonna catch everything that's running down. Is that a technical term?
So Todd, are there any hotspots underneath the buildings?
Not that they necessarily know of. So outside the building where what they deemed, if you see in reports, what they call the waste accumulation pad, is where the real hot spot is with the soil. And that's leaching through the soil, turning into groundwater contaminants that are leaving the site. So they do not think that there are necessarily soil contaminants underneath buildings, although as groundwater moves underneath buildings, then you have potential for some of those contaminants to form out of groundwater and come back into being vapor. And so there's possibilities that those contaminants form vapor, and then that vapor becomes contaminants inside the building as it's creeping up through foundations. But nothing indicating that you have stuff coming from the buildings underneath that is a contaminant source, if that makes sense.
And it's still under private ownership?
Yes. Yeah, so the whole property, and that kind of gets back to the building. So the Army is not looking now or future would ever tear down the buildings. If you had a private owner that was looking to redevelop the site, they could reuse the buildings, or they could tear the buildings down and start from scratch, but that would be dependent upon them. There would be, and again, that's one of the options, that if an owner got into the brown storage program and they look at redevelopment, there may be money available to that person through various grants to either tear down some or all of the buildings or reuse the buildings. But that's kind of dependent upon the owner to figure out what their use for the property is.
But some of the buildings are not conducive to doing vapor testing because
Right.
can't hold air.
Yeah.
But they can do, what is the term, subslab?
Yeah, they can do, they can test the gases that are in the soil,
Yeah.
soil gas testing. They can't do true vapor testing, but there's a pretty good correlation between, I know if there's this capacity of soil gas beside the building, I have some expectations that it's going to get in the building if the building was closed in. So they're looking at doing the soil gas testing to kind of make that correlation, since you really have 0 buildings out there that are what we would call airtight, to where you could get a good air sample inside the building that is not fresh air just blowing through.
And there is a,
We were working to try to, as you remember in our meeting, to encourage them to do some of this subslab testing,
Yeah.
which helps position you to
which they said they would do as part of the plan. I think that was on slide 2 when they showed their slides, but then there's also, we found out there's also an EPA grant we can apply for in the fall. It's about $500,000, I think, that could actually go towards the project. I think that's just sort of something else that's in the mix, but it's good timing for Morgan to be working on this, and then we get this new information, and then we're talking about the RAD. So, and that group would meet biannually, I think, every couple times a year.
Yeah. And they, I believe, had started to communicate with folks about gathering information of people who are interested. I know that they are compiling that, so as they get closer, I'm sure they will. They do an outreach effort to the community that we will help them know how to do that.
So it's, you know, with a little luck and based on what we've been told, you're going to see some activity out there. They're still doing pretty expensive testing now. I think we were told it was probably $1 million, give or take, test that they're doing out there now. So the key is just trying to keep everything moving forward, and it is truly a team effort on that because you've got so many different players involved. But the folks from the state were here, Brownfield representatives were here. We could ask a lot of questions and get some answers, and we sort of understood, all right, there's a few more things we can ask for. Maybe today's not the time, but we'll be asking for some additional items as we continue to move forward. But we should see some dirt being moved soon, and there's going to be some activity going on out there. So that is the beginning, for sure.
29 meetings every year. That's exhausting.
And that's pales in comparison to what staff's had.
Exactly.
So
Thank you both.
if everybody's comfortable, we'll make this live tomorrow.
Have David, have you looked through that?
We've all taken a
So
shot.
from Army standpoint, they play their cards a little closer to the vest, and don't do anything yet. We got to get this. We got to run up the ladder.
They did.
Yep,
They ran
okay,
it
good.
before they sent it over.
Good, but they're truly good to work with. But you got to have some help asking questions, and I think we've got the right help now. Would you agree, David?
I believe we do.
Yep.
Between Jill Syntec and Sean Sullivan, I believe we do.
Yeah, so the Geosyntec folks, when we were sitting around the room talking about this, I said, all right, you just said a mouthful, who's going to take the lead on this? Somebody's got to take the lead. And he said, that's what I'm going to do. So, all right, write that down. So, pretty exciting that we've been able to get it this far, and we'll see some activity out there within the next 3 or 4 weeks, I would think.
Great job on that too. I think it's very transparent. It's easy to read. I loved it. Like I could understand it. Didn't take long to read it and process it. So very great job to you guys who worked on that.
Where will this live on the website?
So it will live in it will be able to be found in multiple ways.
Okay.
So we'll do a banner image on our front page. So it will be the first, it'll kick you guys off. It'll come up first in the rotation for a while, just to kind of get it out there. And then it will live under economic development right now, but we'll be able to link it really from anywhere that is logical, so that a resident can navigate in many ways and find the words. You know, a web page will live here, but it can be linked to from many ways.
And can you send us the link to it? Because I know we all get asked questions, and we can just share the link with
Yeah,
everybody.
and
I know that would help the water tremendously.
Yes, sir. It'll be burlingtonnc.gov/Western Electric.
Okay.
So we'll have that shortcut created, but we'll send all that to you.
Is there any way that some of this can be done in written form that some people who are not very apt on getting on the website?
Yeah. We can definitely create this in a printed form, and then, give it to whomever may need it at that point.
If we've got any high traffic areas where citizens are visiting, that we can have them.
Yeah.
available, but
That's what I'm saying.
even if it's like,
Like the
some
water.
of the, make a big load, Canodal Senior Center,
Absolutely.
Dream Center.
Yeah.
With the insert on the water, so,
Yeah.
information you send out?
Yeah, we've done some Western Electric stuff in there in the past for sure, and we'll definitely add all that. Perfect. Thank you.
Any questions on that? Thanks everybody for all the work on that. Next item is City of Burlington and Graham annexation line of agreement. We've got Todd Lambert and oh, wonderful, we got David Huffman.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. So I know it was in your packet, but just giving a brief explanation. We have a developer out of Raleigh, Greenwood Homes, that came to us wanting to develop a piece of property off of Racetrack Road, which is just south of the city off of 49, south of Shamrock Development, for lack of a better description. Unique circumstances around this property. Part of the property is in Burlington's ETJ, part of the property is in City of Graham's ETJ, part of the property is actually in the county and no ETJ. We have our sewer outfall runs through the property, so we already have sewer service available on the property. We have water line that's in 49 that's just a couple hundred feet away from the property. The problem with the development is in order for it to be a Burlington development, which we would be providing utilities for, so naturally it fits to be a Burlington development, we would have to annex the property so we could apply zoning, and the whole property would be developed under our unified business or unified development ordinance. It would be a satellite annexation, which due to the annexation laws, we would not be eligible for satellite annexation because it is technically closer as the crow flies to the City of Graham's corporate limits than our corporate limits. So there's the conundrum. How do we apply zoning to it without annexing it, and we can't annex it because of current annexation laws? So that started the conversation based on the developer's request with our counterparts in Graham to establish a line of annexation agreement between Burlington and Graham to define which properties would be Burlington properties, which properties would be Graham properties. We were not looking for this to be a long ordeal, define the whole boundary north to south between Burlington and Graham. So we kind of picked the Great Alamance Creek and Monroe Hole Road as our limits, and so this will be a very small definition of an annexation line of agreement. Logically, we picked the line that comes up the creek and then along existing parcel lines based on where those parcels are fronting for service. So if the parcel is being accessed from Racetrack Road, it would be on our side of the line. Anything that was annexed from Lacey Hope Road, the Rogers Road, Quell Drive area, those would be, those are on the Graham side of the line of agreement. So very straightforward. And again, this was not something that Burlington was initiating or even Graham was initiating, but we were both trying to find a solution so that this piece of parcel could be developed. Otherwise, there would be no way for this piece of property to be developed without this annexation line of agreement. So we drafted up an agreement. Graham's staff was okay with the agreement. Our staff was okay with the agreement. I think it's been sent to their attorney for reviews. So we're kind of bringing it before you, asking you to set on tomorrow night's consent agenda to set a public hearing for the March 6th meeting for a public hearing.
It requires a public hearing, you got 10 days notice on it. I've been working with Brian Coleman, their attorney, and he, of course, has worked with the staff over there. I think Craig has had contact directly with both the manager and the assistant manager over there. And the indications are that everything we've sent over, we've taken Brian Coleman has given me a few suggestions that we incorporated into it. And I think everybody can agree on what's there.
Yes, sir. So the request is for date of public hearing on the 5th?
Yes.
March 5th, first meeting, March 6th. Everybody good with that? Anybody any more questions? Okay, I think that's good.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, David. Item H is a voluntary non-contiguous annexation request, 1442 White Hill Road, parcel ID 130-518.
James Lawson, Planning Director, is going to review this item.
Hey, good evening, everyone. I opened this up before and saw all the PDFs and got really nervous. I'm not going to be the only. But listed tonight, the first item is a request for water services at an existing single-family home. It's off of, on the south side of White's Kennel Road. Property is highlighted right in this red shade. It's in front of you tonight because of our city ordinances. And while we have already recommended the utility request, because this property is not contiguous to the existing city limits, there is only water services shown, and in proximity to this property, staff is not recommending the annexation of it. So I have requested that the item be put on the consent agenda for tomorrow night's meeting to defer the annexation, despite the fact that we've already recommended the utility request.
Okay.
All right. Any questions on that?
Any questions? Not, we'll add that to the consent agenda for tomorrow.
All right.
All good.
Great. The next item.
Moving right along. Yep, boards and commissions.
Great. Okay. So the next item are the 3 Planning and Zoning Commission items that they heard at their January 22nd meeting. The first one is 1214 Maple Avenue, and this was a request to rezone the property from heavy industrial to light industrial with a limited use. Here's the property. It's at the corner of Maple and Flushing Street. So you can see that a good portion of the property to the north, including this property, is currently zoned heavy industrial. Across the street is light industrial, and then there are some neighborhood business zoning districts, as well as the high-density residential districts in the orange shade. The applicant has requested a limited use request. There are, I think, 13 uses that are being proposed. Ideally, what they want to do is include a religious institution. They're looking to relocate a church at this corner. The current zoning does not allow for that. They have also added in 6 other uses that staff had recommended and we thought would be beneficial to the community. Coffee shops, event venues, gym, fitness center, indoor commercial recreation, restaurants, and other retail type uses. Those are uses that are currently not allowed in the heavy industrial zoning district. So we took the opportunity to work with the applicant to say, yes, you know, we understand what you're looking to do, but here are some other uses that may be beneficial for the community. There are 3 other uses in the industrial use classification that the applicant wanted to include: light manufacturing, makerspace, and storage warehouse uses. Those 3 are currently allowed. So really what we're looking at is 10 uses, 3 of them were already allowed, and an additional 7 uses that I think are beneficial to the community. I will note there's about 98 uses that are allowed under the light industrial zoning district, so this is really only 10% of the total list of permitted uses. So the existing zoning, as well as much of the surrounding zoning, are all inconsistent with the future land use designation, which is traditional residential. So we already recognize that the area and the zoning is inconsistent. However, moving from heavy industrial to light industrial with these various limited uses is moving, in our opinion, is moving into more conformance to meet the intent for the, and for the future land use designation. We also feel that it also provides good, additional goods and services for the community. So the Planning and Zoning Commission also recommended unanimously at their January 22nd meeting, and like I said, staff recommends the rezoning request as well. This, as well as the two others, we have requested to be put on for public hearing for February 20th. Any questions on this one?
Anybody have any questions? All good.
Okay. The next two are not as easy. So the first one is 106 South Broad Street. The property is highlighted here. It is not far from City Hall, just down the block along East Webb, and it fronts on South Broad Street. It's actually one large parcel. So if you're looking at the aerial map, the property also includes a portion of the land that extends to East Davis Street. But as you can see from the zoning map, that portion is already in a medium density residential zoning district. This other portion is in office and institutional. So we received a rezoning request to change the portion of the property that's in office and institutional to general business with a limited use. The applicant has only requested two specific uses, auto sales or rental and wholesale sales. So despite the 114 different uses, and usually we're asking them to pare it down, in this situation they've only really requested two uses.
What was the second one? The first one was auto sales?
Wholesale sales, also related to auto, as they explained it.
So they may store vehicles that they're going to just sell at auction, not to the retail.
Right. So this property, you'll see in the materials that were included in the packet, this area is really on the cusp of the downtown, and it's in the future land use designation of being mixed use. So staff really feels that this is a important property to be transitional between the downtown and the commercial districts. And we did not recommend the rezoning request based on the limited number of uses. We have had numerous conversations with the applicant, and at this point they are not interested in changing their request. To us, the intent of mixed-use future land use designation is to provide a more pedestrian-oriented use where you're looking at various uses occurring on the property, retail and office, restaurants, things that are going to be provide incentives for the neighborhood, and not just and we don't feel that auto sales or rental or warehouse suits that purpose. We have, and I know that we've had discussions with the applicant. If you want to consider adding some additional things to make it more palatable, you may not be the end user here, but we were not able to convince him. The Planning and Zoning Commission also did not recommend the request. At their meeting on the 22nd, And there were members of the public in the community also who were present. So we also will be asking for this to be considered for the 22nd as well. Any questions on this one?
You're right, I mean, that whole block is, there's nothing like it there. I mean, that would be very odd to stick that in there.
What were the thoughts of the community members that were there? Were they residents of downtown, or did they speak?
Well, so this one, as well as the next one that I'll be talking about, I don't know if they were there specifically for this one, but when we were talking about this one and the next one, a lot of the same conversations came up, that, because auto-related is also considered as that request as well, that it's not the highest and best use. It doesn't serve the community. There's no community benefit associated with that. And specifically, when you're talking about mixed use and offering, potentially a variety of other housing types, that is kind of what the need would be.
They wanted to see.
Yeah.
Thank you for answering my question.
Yeah. This is a pretty large piece of property. It has a building on it that's been vacant for some time, but, it's, I think it's an important site for the area. Any questions? Okay. So the last one. So this is 806 South Meadow. And this property is south of Mebane and Avon Avenue at the intersection there. This property is zoned neighborhood business. You can see from the zoning map, it is itself a neighborhood business district. There's two buildings, or they might be connected, but there's a convenience store that's on the property and then a vacant space. It's not a very large piece of property. And so the applicant is requesting to change the zoning from neighborhood business to general business. Almost all of the uses that they're proposing are currently within the neighborhood business zoning district, except for auto sales or rental, and the multi-family zoning district densities, if it got approved to general business, would go from 4 units per acre to 24 units per acre. So a pretty big jump in allowable number of units. We don't feel that the property, again, it's sort of the same conversation. The community was out very vocal in terms of what they did and didn't want to see here, and issues pertaining to the site, safety concerns. A lot of things were raised, and to the attention of the property owner who was there. So, kind of similar, we feel like the existing zoning makes sense, and that this is also inconsistent with the future land use designation as well, but recognizing going to general business just for the inclusion of an auto sales or rental and the increase of density really doesn't make sense here. Keeping in mind that there are other auto sales and rental right in this vicinity. Across the street on the same side, and those are properly zoned for that.
Yeah, there are a lot of, there's a lot of business and income generating facilities all through that corridor, but it kind of stops right here.
Correct.
So what is on this property now? Is that where the convenience store is?
Yes.
How is that?
There used to be a whole church too.
That's what I was thinking.
Two uses there.
Yeah, a clothing store, I think after the church closed down, something like that.
Is that what it is now?
There's an existing building right there, but they're going to turn into an auto sales place.
space is being occupied right now.
It's vacant.
But it's, you know, the way that, so I don't know if you can see clearly, but this is the portion that they want to put auto sales in, which is really, really limited in terms of the space. And, you know, there's been no talk about tearing the buildings down. However, you know, if the zoning was approved, that's not on the table.
They want to have it in the back of the building?
There's no site plan associated with it, so I don't know, but I would assume, which I think you've had some PAC meetings with them, that this is where they want to put the auto use, the auto sales. And very small operation, however, it's very, very limited, and we want to make sure that anything is, you know, designed safely and appropriately, and I just don't think that allows for enough space to accommodate that.
So that one for February 20th also?
Yes, sir.
Okay, any questions on any of those three? All right, Jamie, we're good for all three of those.
Okay, thank you so much.
One quick question, one at the corner of Broad and Well, I go by there a lot, the sign is down, does the sign stay up through the hearing, or if they rezone it?
No, the sign will come down after the planning and zoning commission makes,
Okay, after.
and then it comes back up when there's, when we set the public hearing date.
Okay.
Yep. So it will be a different color.
Okay.
So that's it on the agenda items. Does anybody have any questions? A lot of stuff. Back through it. If not, we'll turn it over to Greg for city manager report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I do have one item I would like to bring to your attention, and that's with respect to both sick leave as a benefit that City Council gave to staff. It was part of our police retention program. Something a little bit different, something Wake County has done for many, many years, since the early 2000s. Most municipalities in Wake County did it, and we tried to increase that, our benefit, and when we looked at it for the PD, we also looked at it for all the staff. However, the local government employee retirement system in December sent a letter regarding the use of bonus sick leave to all local governments within the system. Ledgers has determined that they will not allow the bonus sick leave to count towards service in the retirement system as the city and other local governments had intended. Again, we basically copied Wake County's policy. Due to the notification from the retirement system, city staff is recommending ending the bonus sick leave program. If agreeable, the ordinance change will be placed on your city council agenda tomorrow night. In order to make sure that time that has already been given under this program, Ledgers will allow the city to use the bonus sick leave hours that have already been given to replace regular sick leave and vacation hours taken by employees in prior years. In other words, they will allow us to substitute the sick hours with the bonus sick leave that we were given. We have contacted the retirement system directly, and we have stated, in a letter, here's what we're planning to do. Are you agreeable with our thought process? And they have given us that confirmation that they do agree with that. We have reviewed, staff has reviewed all employees who've retired with the city since November 2022 and used the substitution method above, and they are okay and not affected. But with existing employees, when we do stop it, we will review our current employees who've earned the bonus leave and hours and perform that same substitution as what we've done for our retired employees. Again, in order so that we're not fully taking something away One of the things we would like to recommend is that instead of bonus sick leave of service, that at those anchor years of 8, 15, and 25 at the end of that we give 40 hours of that time as bonus leave. And again, this bonus leave would be hours that must be used for any other leave. So if somebody left, they would not get credit for those hours. So it is really just an additional time, to really encourage them to maybe stay another year or so for that anchor position that we talked about before. Again, I really appreciate City Council looking at this back in 2022 and really expanding it to all our employees, which really helped with our recruitment at the time. And
what was it, 8, 15, and what?
8, 15, and 25 years.
And that would be 40 hours.
Yes, sir.
Obviously, you said all municipalities, right? That
Yeah.
includes Wake.
That includes Wake for dealing with this.
Now, how far do they have to go back?
Again, I think since they started in the early 2000s.
Wow.
So, and our biggest concern was we did not want this to be a liability to either the employee or to the city.
It'd be an unfunded liability.
Yes.
Against the purchase.
Yes, sir. But they have, agreed to our method of changing that bonus leave that we've given and using prior leave, and they're fine with that. But again, we just need to stop the process.
So
And
this would be.
If agreeable, it's an ordinance change, and we would add that to the agenda tomorrow night.
Kind of don't have a choice.
And Ronnie will appreciate this. We really work hard as staff with Peggy and HR, management staff and PD, really to try to make sure that we understood this as well, but come up with this recommendation. And we did lean on ledgers, and we also leaned on what Wake County would be doing as well.
I'm not so sure it's the last thing. I do know that the measures are looking at this retirement system and in terms of inflation, just what all these significant increases have been over the last 4 or 5 years and how that's going to work out in the long run. So I think they're trying to protect the retirement system.
They are. And again, luckily for us, it's only been since November 2022. So, but we tried, and again, I appreciate City Council's willingness to be a little bit cutting edge on providing benefits for our employees.
Is that on your end?
That's it. Yes, sir.
So, one other quick item, just for clarification or put some closure to it. Craig and I were talking earlier, there had been some rumors floating around that ABSS might be sort of exploring a reduction in force of social workers and counselors within the school system. So Craig and I talked about it today, and we agreed he'd reach out to Dr. Butler and get an update. I think you sent an email to everybody, but there's been nothing formal.
Nothing formal at this point. My understanding is the short gap, the county board commissioners approved $250,000 so that the school system would not have to do RIFs at this time.
I think they've already done it. I had one of my parents that is an employee that was a 12-month employee, and she got cut to 10 and a half, effective immediately.
But we've asked ABSF if they are looking at changes to let us know about the changes so that if we have comments that we need to make back that really are supporting juveniles and our SROs within the school system, if anything is going to affect that, we want to be made aware of it and make sure that we have input before decisions made.
I mean, we've got two pieces. One is we've got school systems, schools within the city that have a direct impact on our citizens. And two is we've got staff, SRO, that are going to be, their role will end up changing because they'll end up being adjunct counselors.
So is the school system in a position where they have to, are they under budget for the fiscal year? That's why they're cutting positions?
That's my understanding. I'm not sure if they're looking at reorganizing to get back where they feel like it is right sizing or what the thought process is, but again, they were talking rifts and the county board of commissioners stepped in and kind of, that's just a short, stopgap issue right now. But we don't know how it may affect in the long term. But we'll stay on top of it.
Premise being that if they do come up with the formal comprehensive plan, we've reached out and said, hey, we want to be a part of that discussion because we would like to go on the record as saying that we're not advocates of reducing those positions. Fair statement?
That's fair statement.
How would that impact you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's where a lot of my concern with the police space ends up. So what we see in the school space is that there are a variety of needs with the students, right? And our school system, I believe, is really trying to do the best that they can. So of course, we're advocating in that space that we believe that there should be counselors in the schools, especially in the right schools. That there should be social workers, especially in the right schools. Because inevitably what happens if those layers of service aren't provided are that the police officers become the first responders to those things when they come up in the schools. It's a natural process that, the teacher calls the assistant principal calls the SRO, and then that's where the services begin. We see our law enforcement crisis counselor, of course, funded by council that works out as a contract employee from the police department in the schools now, already, right? That's before any kind of reductions in force. We have juvenile diversion funded by council that's taken a significant portion of those incidents out of the schools and get kids into the right places. The concern if some of those programs go away is that demand for Burlington Police Department services goes up. And naturally, law enforcement crisis council response goes up. And that's a demand that we may end up having to take on.
Will the same thing happen with county schools, with the county sheriff's department?
Yes, sir. I believe so.
Let me ask you something. Everyone's not putting pots of money, but isn't all that just shifting responsibility from one group to another group?
Yes, my thing.
Is it? And you didn't all the time.
It appears to me, again, I don't want to get too much into it, but state money doesn't change, local money doesn't change, federal money doesn't change. So it seems to me from a distance, and I know nothing, that obviously COVID, there was a lot of money that came through, and that COVID money is out now. So therefore, something has got to happen to make up the difference of the COVID dollars coming in versus COVID dollars going out. So that's my take on it. I don't know.
And I think that's a very fair assumption because he did talk about right sizing is what the plan is.
And that money doesn't last forever, and you get
Not sustainable, is it?
Yeah, no, it's,
I think one other thing I'd like to add just from the police side is the school system and the schools collectively are so important for our youth to have good supervision during the day, learning, developing, and growing into productive members of society. In this community, there are 14 and 15-year-olds firing guns, right, that don't have that level of supervision. And of course, anything that jeopardizes the school system collectively runs the risk of increasing the number of teens that are out firing guns, making bad choices, right? So it is that broader perspective in this space. Hopefully, we're ahead of it, and I think everybody's working towards the same goals.
yeah.
On that subject, Chief, I don't know if you can give us an update or not, but I know we had an incident where there was a delivery driver robbed at gunpoint.
Yes, sir.
Felony, I would assume. And our staff did a wonderful job, based on the feedback that I've received, using K-9, investigative work, apprehending the juveniles that were responsible, only to have them released to a responsible adult
Yeah, correct.
with a felony event.
It's definitely wrong. There was an error by Department of Juvenile Justice about what should have happened with those 17-year-olds. They are currently wanted. Our officers were out. I was checking on it actually when I stepped out to take a phone call around 5:30. They're in the process of trying to apprehend those folks.
Again.
Again, correct. I'll tell you, especially for my seat as the chief, I worry so much about having officers have to go find people again and run the risk of apprehending somebody that already knows that they're wanted instead of having dealt with them in that moment. Our local chief court counselor has been involved in trying to right side that process at DJJ. We've gotten good feedback since then. So the wrong stuff happened that night for sure. I think that it's not a Burlington Police Department issue, but we hold a role in not pressing harder to get better answers that night, and we've definitely done that moving forward.
So there's just a gap in the system on DJJ's end.
Correct. Yeah. And a misunderstanding of the facts. Essentially, once a 17-year-old has been adjudicated as an adult in court, they're always considered an adult after that. DJJ got that interpretation wrong.
And I want to thank our chief for staying on top of this at 5:45 in the morning on Sunday and having contact directly with juvenile. So we do appreciate it.
Anything else? Ronnie's ready to go.
No, I just got to stand up, been a long night.
Thank you for being the whole lot of stuff. All right, if nothing else, we will stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Thanks.
How about you didn't speak up over
Is that because
Well, it's just a liability because it allows.
I mean, we're talking about hockey.
No.
I think they're all drill,
Yeah, across the state.
Little.
It was just Wayne
Have you met
County.
Charlotte?
Wayne County
Dwayne,
municipality.
have you met Dwayne?
Yeah, no, I've been back.
Great guy.
Because Wayne County, not city of
It's Wayne County and city.
after the election.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Well, you know, right after the
Oh, yeah. She needs that.
I'm sorry, there.
And he's I'm stealing it.
Treasurer's office.
Yes, absolutely.
And you guys, wait a minute, you guys base your policy on the county.
Or the city. City.
No, not hardly one. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, from 20.
He hasn't been supportive. Dwayne's more of that to.
You're saying the original change of policy, not this recent change of policy.
Yeah, was it, what we did in 2016.
It was almost like normal, almost always.
And the policy of the.
We get close.
We didn't get see notification in December that.
They should work their way in.
Long time ago, I didn't have time.
We're holding the employees on.
We did the bike event plan years ago, and it'd be nice if that.
I'll infer that the treasurer didn't want to go back on the retirees.
Right.
In other
We
places.
never gotten anything except Front Street
10
Greenway.
years.
Yeah, well,
So they're trying to make it.
Draw a line.
Fair playing field for everybody.
But let's say, hey, from this point on,
I was just.
this will be, could be liable for your employee, it could be liable for the organization.
And the city steward,
So,
which is
how
suburban,
long
Tiger
ago
Woods has a house
did that
out on
policy
he's a judicial.
Yeah.
I've got it.
retroactively take effect?
Okay, so
They sent
anyway,
us a letter that said.
we had public meetings all the time,
That,
and
yeah.
everybody's
No, I'm talking
commenting on
about
the
the
same
state treasurer's office.
Like,
We got a
Basically,
letter.
they said that from
That's what they
here
did,
on out.
kind of what we've done.
Yeah,
Any
this
bonus,
is-
sick leave will not count for retirement.
Oh, it's 1 day per month, they said.
But what you had
Down Front Street, which.
What has been given,
allowed
what,
before would be.
what
They did really nice.
what they
They
said.
have them on the side of the road,
But
right?
it's pretty
So
allowed
it's
to-
What we did is we
They have
basically
the bike
replaced
share
what was used
lane, they even
with
paid
that
for parking
additional sick
green,
time,
it all
and they were
goes
okay with
stuff,
that.
But on a, if you know Stewart, it's
You should-
Route,
you
it's
should
the
ask
Route
her.
1, right?
This
It
is
goes all the way down
more
to Top
detailed.
Sound.
Yeah,
Really need to.
Part of the beach.
I think it's very, I think it's, the state
This is not
treasurer
one meeting.
has stated that way,
But bottom line is,
government.
they didn't penalize you because you had already done that.
But,
So you don't have to have.
yeah, right, we're all good, but we're just not, yeah, you're right. But I think it's important to say moving forward,
It's
that
not
we were not
what it is.
overly.
It's
And you're sure that it was.
Easily satisfied.
Raleigh, I think.
Yeah, well, there's also the debris.
Morgan said it was the city of Raleigh.
Pushed over.
Yeah.
But
And it depends on,
Well, I'll say
so you
this.
think of Woodlands Avenue,
Yeah,
where they have it.
well,
It's
again,
not as busy, I mean. they-
Raleigh for a long time, I was trying to say Wayne County in general because Apex and Cary and the other municipalities have been doing it as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that, I was kind of saying,
We drove.
and not specifically,
He's retired now.
I should have probably.
That is like that.
No.
Wayne County municipality.
Yeah, Wayne County municipality, yeah.
He's an older guy.
But the mall for Burlington was,
Gray, a
Raleigh.
little bit gray.
okay, all right, Morgan is
That
right.
they started, they, yeah, ask more, ask more.
You know,
Yeah, I'll confuse the shit out of it.
yeah, I should have just assumed that.
But go back there where that, previously lived. When we were building Davidson Park, she was complaining about blasting and shaking her head. But anyway, she connected from Davidson Park to.
By the way, a lot of positions of superintendents was funded with pandemic relief funds, only for a short period of time. And since there's no pandemic, why do we know these school nurses were doing contact tracing?
Well, that's what I said, what he said was right side. Some of
that.
I don't know
totally
if
fine.
like that.
But around those things, it makes
Like
perfect
through
sense.
the
But I think what I learned out in Road Free Friday
Okay.
was there were like 18 council
There's a
members
low,
that are here.
there's some creek.
Yeah, we did some, we did some, and we got a right to build a bridge across.
He's
And we should
talking
have done it back then,
about
but we
a
thought
24th position being.
Now, chief.
We were talking about various things. I said, what about be able to get some money to look at that way for sprinkled.
Yeah.
He said, spray, that's what that's for, because if the
That's
DOT
it.
signs off on it.
Yeah.
Well,